Imagine, for a moment, as night gradually begins to fall, and the familiar sounds of a long day slowly fade into the distance. Let us step together through a doorway. In time, on the other side, there are no brightly illuminated cities, no sounds of traffic, no hurried rhythm of modern life. Instead, there is a world so cold, vast, and wild that it is difficult for the modern human mind to truly imagine. This is the world of the Ice Age, a land covered in white snow, where cold winds move quietly across endless open plains. Through the pale mist, herds of enormous mammoths slowly make their way across the landscape. Farther away, predatory cats with long, razor-sharp teeth hide among frost-covered bushes. Ancient wolves, giant bears, woolly rhinoceroses, and countless other creatures that we now know only through fossils once truly lived, breathed, and existed beneath that ancient sky. But perhaps what makes the world of the Ice Age so captivating is not only the presence of its enormous creatures. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, primordial images have always held a strange and powerful influence over the human mind. Perhaps it is because, somewhere in the deepest layers of the unconscious, we can still sense the echo of a world that existed long ago. When we look upon a mammoth walking across a snowy plain, or imagine the gaze of an ancient predator in the darkness of the night, we are not merely observing the distant past of the earth, we are also touching something very ancient within ourselves. For modern human beings, even though we live surrounded by artificial lights, technology, and cities that never sleep, still carry within the mind symbolic memories of deep forests, darkness, survival, and the untamed wilderness of nature. On tonight's journey, we will explore together 100 fascinating facts about Ice Age animals. We will encounter the enormous creatures that once dominated the frozen lands, discover how they lived, hunted, protected their herds, and adapted to a harsh and unforgiving world. And among these scientific stories, we will also slowly reflect upon the mysterious connection between ancient nature and the human mind of today. So now, find a truly comfortable position. Allow the room to become a little quieter. Perhaps you are preparing to drift into sleep, and perhaps this is the perfect moment for us to travel back tens of thousands of years into the past. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy gentle, thoughtful stories about nature, history, the universe, and the mysteries of the human mind, please subscribe to the channel and join us on the journeys that lie ahead. But for now, let the long day come to a close. Allow your imagination to slowly walk across the ancient snow, and together with us, return to a world where enormous footprints may still seem to remain upon the frozen ground, the world of Ice Age animals. The universe may be far more crowded than what we can see. Imagine, for a moment, that on a very quiet night, when the room has already sunk into darkness and the sounds of a long day have gradually faded into the distance, you look up at the sky. Before you are countless tiny stars shimmering in the depths of space. We often feel as though we are looking directly at the universe, that the vast sky above us, however mysterious it may be, is unfolding before our eyes, like a great book that has already been opened. But perhaps the truth is different. Perhaps we have never truly seen the universe. We have only seen the part that our eyes, our telescopes, and our technology are capable of reaching. For centuries, humanity has mapped the sky. We have named the stars, measured the distances to distant galaxies, and discovered thousands of planets orbiting other suns. The catalogues of planets have grown longer and longer, and the numbers have become increasingly impressive. Every new discovery gives us the feeling that we are taking another step forward on our journey toward understanding the universe. But a long list does not necessarily mean a complete picture. What we have found may simply be what is easiest to find. In the world of astronomy, a large planet often reveals its existence more easily than a small one. A hot planet may produce more detectable signals than a frozen world. A planet orbiting close to its star may create effects that are easier to recognize than a planet quietly moving through the distant darkness at the edge of a star system. And a planet that passes directly in front of its star, from precisely the right angle as seen from our perspective, may leave behind a signature that a sufficiently sensitive telescope can detect. But what about the worlds that do none of these things? Small planets, cold planets, worlds orbiting so far away that a single revolution takes tens, hundreds, or even thousands of years. Planets that do not shine on their own. Planets that never pass in front of their stars when viewed from Earth. Perhaps they are still there, not somewhere impossibly distant, beyond the edge of reality, but within the very regions of space that we continue to observe every day. They exist, they move, they experience seasons of their own, endure cold or light, carry atmospheres, oceans, mountains, and storms, yet leave behind no signal clear enough for humanity to recognize. A planet may exist for billions of years without a single living being on Earth ever knowing of it. It is a strange thought, and also a beautiful one, because it makes the universe seem more humble in our eyes, or rather, it makes us more humble before the universe. Carl Gustav Jung devoted his entire life to exploring another world, filled with invisible things, the world of the human mind. He understood that what we become conscious of is only a small part of the totality of our psychological life. Beneath the thoughts we can name, the memories we can recall, and the emotions we can explain, there remains a far deeper and wider realm, the unconscious. Perhaps that is why the story of invisible planets takes on a particular beauty when viewed through Jung's lens. In the universe, there are worlds that exist but have not yet been seen. Within the mind, there are also thoughts, memories, fears, desires, and parts of ourselves that exist without our having fully recognized them. We often tend to believe that what we can see is everything that exists, but Jung offered us a different perspective. Reality is far greater than the part that consciousness is capable of illuminating. Consciousness is like a small lamp. It illuminates one area, and we call that illuminated area the world we know. But beyond the edge of the light, there is still darkness. Not because there is nothing there, but perhaps because our light is not yet strong enough to see. This, too, is one of the deepest lessons that astronomy offers humanity. We cannot simply say that a planet does not exist merely because a telescope has not yet seen it. The failure to detect something is not certain proof of its non-existence. Sometimes, the only thing we can honestly say is, "We do not know yet," and that phrase, though so brief, contains an astonishing vastness. We do not know yet. In modern life, people often dislike the empty spaces of uncertainty. We want answers. We want data. We want evidence. We want everything to be classified, named, and placed neatly in its proper position. But the universe has no obligation to become simple, merely to fit within the limits of our understanding. Perhaps the Milky Way is more crowded than we imagine. Perhaps among the stars we already know, countless worlds still exist that have never appeared in any catalogue. Lonely planets drifting through the darkness. Oceans buried deep beneath layers of ice. Frozen worlds orbiting at the distant edges of star systems. Planets so small that their signals are swallowed by light and distance. And perhaps, somewhere, an entire world exists in complete silence. No one knows its name. No one has seen it. No one has ever imagined exactly what it looks like. And yet, it still exists. There is a strange peace in that thought, because it reminds us that not being seen does not mean having no value. Something that does not appear in the light does not mean that it does not exist. This is true of distant planets, but sometimes it is also true of human life itself. There are emotions we have not yet named. There are memories lying very deep within us. There are dreams that have been forgotten, There are possibilities within ourselves that have never been explored. They are like distant planets. It is not that they do not exist. Perhaps they simply lie beyond the limits of our present ability to observe them. Jung was especially interested in the process through which human beings gradually come to recognize the unknown parts of themselves. He did not see the mind as a small room that we have already explored completely. On the contrary, it is more like a vast landscape in which consciousness has only managed to set up a few small lamps. And perhaps that is why, when we look up at the universe, we always feel something deeply personal. We are looking outward, but at the same time, we are also looking inward. An undiscovered planet makes us wonder, how many worlds are still out there? An unexplored part of the unconscious makes us wonder, how many things within ourselves do we still not know? Neither question has a final answer, and perhaps that is precisely where their beauty lies. Imagine that all of humanity's technology is like a small doorway opening onto the universe. Through that doorway, we see what can be seen, but beyond the doorway lies a space so vast that it is almost impossible to imagine. Every new telescope opens the doorway a little wider. Every new algorithm helps us recognize a signal that was once overlooked. Every new method of observation reveals that what we once believed to be darkness may, in fact, be filled with structures, objects, and worlds. This means that the history of science is not simply the history of discovering new things. Sometimes, it is the history of realizing that we had been looking incorrectly, or that we had seen too little, or simply that we did not yet possess the tools necessary to see. And that is why today's catalogue of planets, although it already contains thousands of worlds, should not be regarded as a complete map of the universe. It is more like a map drawn by the light of a flashlight in the middle of an immense forest. What the light illuminates, we can describe. What lies beyond the light, we cannot yet speak of with certainty. But the existence of darkness does not make the forest disappear. On the contrary, it reminds us that the forest may be far larger than we ever imagined. Perhaps this is the most fitting thought to carry with us as we continue our journey tonight. As you lie down and prepare to close your eyes, imagine that somewhere in the Milky Way, there may be planets quietly orbiting stars that we have never closely observed. There may be worlds that will never receive enough light to be easily detected. There may be planets drifting alone between the stars, with no sun to call home. They are there, or perhaps they are not. We do not know yet, but it is precisely within the space between what is known and what remains unknown that the imagination begins to awaken. And perhaps, as you slowly drift towards sleep tonight, you can carry with you one gentle thought. We do not see the whole of reality. We mostly see only what our technology allows us to see. Beyond the light of our telescopes, there are still worlds that have not yet been named. Beyond the illuminated realm of consciousness, there are still parts of the mind that remain unexplored. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not what the darkness is hiding, but that one day, when the light of understanding reaches a little farther, we may discover that this universe, and perhaps even our own minds, are far more crowded, deeper, and vastly more expansive than anything we have ever seen. Rogue planets, worlds without a sun. Imagine a world drifting through the darkness. No star rises above its horizon. No dawn comes to awaken the sky. No sunset paints the clouds with the red hues of the dying day. No spring arrives with warm sunlight. There is no familiar sun to mark the passage of time. There is only darkness. A darkness so profound that it is difficult to imagine. In the vast spaces between the stars, worlds like these may exist. They are known as rogue planets. Unlike the planets we are familiar with in our solar system, they do not orbit a central star. They have no stable orbit around a sunday. They drift freely through interstellar space, carrying with them their mass, their history, and perhaps even secrets of their own. There is something both lonely and beautiful about that image. We often think of a planet as a member of a family, a star at the center, planets orbiting around it, moons orbiting the planets, everything moving according to familiar laws of gravity, forming a system with a sense of order. But rogue planets do not belong to that picture, or perhaps, more precisely, they once belonged somewhere. Some planets may have been born within a star system, just like countless other planets. When a planetary system is still young, however, everything may be far from peaceful. Giant planets move, orbits change, gravity pulls, pushes, and disturbs the objects around them. During these powerful gravitational encounters, an entire world can be thrown out of its system. A single moment, a change in an orbit, and an entire world begins a journey with no clear destination. From that moment onward, the planet no longer circles the star that once illuminated it. It enters the darkness, not for a few years, not for a few thousand years, but perhaps for millions, or even billions of years. When we think of a rogue planet, we may imagine it as a solitary traveler crossing an endless ocean. But its loneliness is greater than any image humanity has ever experienced. Our oceans still have shores. Deserts still have horizons. Even the night sky is viewed from a planet where life exists, where there is light, and where there are other people. But a rogue planet may travel through regions of space where the distances between stars are measured in trillions of kilometers. There is no sound, no witness, no name. It simply continues to drift. And perhaps it is here that the story of astronomy begins to touch a deeper layer of the human imagination. Carl Gustav Jung was especially interested in the symbols that emerge from the deepest layers of the mind. In countless ancient stories, humanity has always been fascinated by the image of the traveler, the exile, the one who leaves home, the wanderer who enters a dark forest and must continue onward without knowing where the journey will lead. Perhaps rogue planets carry a similar symbolic power. A world that once belonged to a system, then became separated from it, and was forced to continue existing in a completely unfamiliar space. But what is interesting is that we should not turn the rogue planet into an overly tragic metaphor. Because in nature, separation from a system does not necessarily mean an ending. Sometimes, a departure is simply the beginning of another form of existence. This is what makes rogue planets so fascinating. They have no Sunday. But that does not mean they are dead worlds. We often associate light with life and darkness with death. That is entirely natural for human beings. The whole biological history of our species has unfolded beneath the light of the Sunday. Plants grow through sunlight. Earth's climate is shaped by solar energy. Day and night regulate the rhythms of our lives. And so, it is difficult to imagine a world without a sun that could still possess a complex history. But the universe does not necessarily have to follow human intuition. A planet may carry with it residual heat from its formation. It may possess energy deep within its interior. Radioactive decay may continue to produce heat. Geological processes may continue over extraordinarily long periods of time. If conditions are suitable, a world that appears to have completely disappeared into darkness may still preserve warm regions within itself. And so, the story of rogue planets gradually changes from a story of loneliness into a story of the possibility of survival. And perhaps that is what makes it so profound. Not everything that loses its familiar source of light immediately disappears. Not every separation means an ending. Not every dark place is completely empty. From the perspective of Jungian psychology, darkness is not merely something frightening. Darkness can symbolize what remains unknown. It is the region beyond the light of consciousness. When we cannot see something within ourselves, that does not mean it does not exist. It may still be moving, quietly exerting its influence, waiting for the right moment to be recognized. And a rogue planet is similar in this way. It does not shine brightly enough for us to see it easily. It may not orbit a star in a way that produces familiar signals. It does not appear clearly in the beautiful images captured by telescopes, but it still has gravity. It still has a history. It still has structure. It may still carry sources of energy deep within itself. It exists, even when we do not know where it is. Perhaps this is one of the gentlest lessons that wandering worlds can offer us. Existence does not need to be witnessed in order to be real. A flower may bloom in a forest that no one ever passes through. A star may shine for millions of years without a single living being ever seeing it. A planet may drift through space for billions of years without ever being given a name. And all of these things are still part of reality. The same can be true in human life. We sometimes become too accustomed to measuring value by the ability to be seen, to be recognized, to be noticed, to be named. But nature does not operate that way. The universe does not need an audience in order to exist. A planet does not become less real simply because no one is looking at it. And a human being does not become less valuable simply because they are passing through a period of loneliness. This is a particularly fitting reflection for the moments before sleep. As the outside world gradually becomes quiet, we often begin to hear more clearly the empty spaces within ourselves. Some people have experienced the feeling of being separated from a familiar orbit. A great change occurs. A relationship ends. A place once called home no longer feels the same. And suddenly, a person feels as though they are drifting through a vast expanse, uncertain of where to go. A rogue planet cannot choose a new orbit according to its own will. But it continues to exist. And sometimes, that alone is already a kind of miracle. Perhaps we will never know exactly how many rogue planets are moving through the Milky Way. Perhaps the true number is far greater than anything we have yet discovered. Most of them are too dark, too distant, and too difficult to observe. They reveal their existence only occasionally, through very subtle effects that scientists must patiently search for. But perhaps it is precisely their difficulty in being seen that makes them so special. They remind us that the universe is not made only of what shines brightly. It is also made of quiet things, dark objects, empty distances, journeys that no one witnesses. If a rogue planet is drifting through the Milky Way at this very moment, it may be passing through a region of space entirely without the kind of life we know. Its surface may be so cold that every movement becomes slow. Its sky may always be dark. The stars may appear only as distant points of light, never close enough to warm anything. But deep beneath its surface, the story may not yet be over. There may still be heat. There may still be movement. There may still be an ocean preserved within the darkness. And perhaps, as the universe so often does, a place we imagine to be completely silent may actually be concealing something that has never been seen before. So, as we continue our journey tonight, let us keep in our minds the image of a solitary planet, drifting among the stars. No sunrise, no sunset, no familiar sun, only immense darkness and a journey stretching across periods of time that human beings can scarcely imagine. And yet, it is still there, still carrying its own history, still governed by the ancient laws of the universe, still continuing its journey. And perhaps, within that loneliness that seems almost endless, it is preserving a secret that may one day force us to change the way we think about life, darkness, and the very meaning of existence itself. Because perhaps, a world without a sun is not necessarily a world that is dead. And sometimes, behind the darkness we imagine to be empty, an entire world may still exist, quietly, waiting to be discovered. Could life exist in the darkness? When human beings think about life, we almost immediately think about light. We think about the Sunday, about the first morning after a long night, about rays of light touching the ground, dissolving the mist, awakening the plants, and guiding the rhythms of countless living beings. Throughout human history, light has always seemed to be closely connected with life. Light brings warmth, Light nourishes plants. Light divides time into day and night. Light allows us to see the world, to see one another, and sometimes to see ourselves. So, when we are asked whether a planet without a sun could contain life, our first reaction might be, how could that be possible? A world without sunrise, no golden light falling upon the ground, no blue sky, no star close enough to warm an entire planet. Everything that remains seems to be nothing but darkness, cold, and silence. But the universe, as we have discovered time and time again, often does not care about the limits that human imagination places upon it. A planet without a sun is not necessarily a planet without energy, and a place without light is not necessarily a place without life. This is the idea that makes rogue planets one of the deepest mysteries of modern astronomy. When a planet becomes separated from its parent star and begins drifting through the space between the stars, it may lose its greatest source of energy, but it does not necessarily lose everything. A world may still carry within itself the memory of the moment it was born. When a planet forms from gas, dust, and matter within a protoplanetary disk, enormous collisions, the compression of material, and the process of accretion can generate a considerable amount of heat. Not all of that heat disappears immediately. Some of it may remain trapped deep within the planet and then be released gradually over extraordinarily long periods of time. Just as a stone taken from a fire continues to hold its warmth, a planet may also carry the heat of its past deep within itself. But what is even more remarkable is that a planet does not rely only on the memory of its formation. Other processes may continue within it. The decay of radioactive elements produces heat. Contraction under the influence of gravity can release energy. Geological activity can continue to move the material within. Volcanoes may erupt. The planetary core may still remain hot. And within that darkness, which may appear completely motionless, a world may still be alive in a geological sense. Within it, there is still movement, still energy, still processes that have not yet come to an end. This leads us to a question far more beautiful than simply asking whether such a planet has light. The real question is, could there be a source of energy capable of sustaining complex processes? Because life, at least as we understand it, does not need light merely for light to exist. What it needs at a deeper level is a source of energy capable of creating and sustaining chemical processes. On Earth itself, we have found examples that make this idea easier to understand. In the deepest regions of the ocean, where sunlight cannot reach, complex ecosystems still exist. There, life does not depend upon light in the way that plants on land do. Some organisms use energy from chemical reactions involving substances released from deep within the earth. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor are among the strangest sights on our planet. In complete darkness, deep beneath kilometers of seawater, streams of hot material rising from the interior of the earth meet the cold waters of the ocean, and around them, life can flourish. No sun, no sky, no sunrise, and yet, life is still present. This does not prove that life certainly exists on rogue planets. Science must make a clear distinction between possibility and evidence. So far, we have no evidence confirming the existence of life on a rogue planet. But what we know about life on Earth forces us to become more humble when approaching that question. Perhaps sunlight is not the only condition upon which life can depend. Perhaps we are simply accustomed to one form of existence because we happen to live within that very form of existence. And this is one of the deepest limitations of human perception. We often take our own experience as the standard for the entire universe. We live beneath a star, and so, we easily assume that all life must need a star. We live on a surface filled with light, and so, we easily assume that darkness is the end. But Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This statement belongs to the central spirit of Jung's thought about confronting the unconscious and the shadow within the human being. And if we allow those words to echo for a moment within the space of this astronomical story, they seem to take on a particularly beautiful meaning. We often try to search for life by searching for light, but perhaps part of maturity in science is also learning how to look into the darkness, not with fear, but with curiosity. For darkness is not necessarily emptiness. It may simply be a region to which our eyes have not yet adapted, a place where our instruments are not yet sensitive enough, a part of reality that consciousness has not yet learned how to recognize. Imagine a rogue planet drifting between the stars. Its surface may freeze into a cold outer shell. Its sky may know no sunrise. No great star hangs close to the horizon. But deep beneath that ice, the pressure may become greater. Heat from the planet's interior may continue to spread outward. If the physical conditions are suitable, a layer of liquid water may survive, protected beneath thick sheets of ice. And within that ocean, entirely without light, what might happen? This is where imagination meets science. We should not invent secret cities or strange creatures simply because doing so would make the story more exciting. But neither should we close the door to possibility merely because something lies beyond our familiar experience. An ocean beneath the ice, if it exists under suitable conditions, may contain water in a liquid state. It may contain minerals from the seafloor. It may contain energy from geological processes. It may allow complex chemical reactions to take place. And in the science of the origins of life, it is precisely the combination of water, chemistry, matter, and energy that gives us something worth contemplating. This changes the image of a rogue planet completely. At first, we imagine it as a dead sphere, a frozen mass of rock, a world thrown out of its home and abandoned in darkness. But the more we think about it, the more we begin to realize that the surface of a world does not necessarily tell its entire story. The surface may be frozen, while beneath it, an entire ocean may still be moving. The sky may be completely dark, while deep within the ground, energy may still be produced. There may be no light, but there may still be activity. There may be no sunrise, but there may still be transformation. There may be no Sunday, but that does not necessarily mean there is no life. And perhaps this is where the story of the universe begins to touch upon a reflection that feels very close to human experience. We often judge everything by its surface. A face that appears calm makes us think that there is no storm within. A person who remains silent makes us think that they have nothing to say. A dark room makes us assume that the room is empty. But Jung devoted his entire life to exploring what lies behind the surface of consciousness. He understood that a human being is not merely the part of ourselves that we can see. Beneath the light of awareness lie deeper layers, memories, instincts, symbols, fears, unlived possibilities, and parts of the self that have never been named. A frozen planet may remind us of this as well. We see a cold surface, but we cannot be certain what is happening beneath it. Perhaps this is one of the gentlest lessons that invisible worlds can offer us. Do not be too quick to equate the absence of light with the absence of life. In life, we sometimes pass through winters within ourselves as well. There are periods when everything seems to become quiet. Dreams appear to grow fewer. Familiar joys no longer feel as powerful. We look inward and see only a cold, empty space. But beneath the surface, life may still be continuing. Something may be healing. An idea may be taking shape. A new part of the human being may be quietly growing. Not all life needs to bloom immediately upon the surface. Some seeds remain beneath the ground throughout the winter. Some streams continue to flow beneath the ice. Some fires burn so deeply that no one on the surface knows they are still burning. And perhaps, somewhere among the hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way, there is a world like that as well. A planet without a Sunday. A surface submerged in darkness. a thick layer of ice covering an entire world. But very deep beneath it, there may be water, there may be heat, there may be chemical reactions, and perhaps there may be some form of life that our imagination has never yet conceived. We do not know. And that very uncertainty is part of the beauty of science. Science does not only give us answers. Sometimes, its greatest gift is to make our questions larger. It teaches us that the more we know, the more clearly we begin to recognize the limits of what we once considered obvious. There was once a time when we believed that Earth was the center of the universe. Then we realized that we orbit the Sunday. Then we realized that the Sun is only one star among countless others. After that, we discovered planets orbiting other stars. And now, we are beginning to ask an even stranger question. Could a world that does not orbit any star still be capable of supporting life? That question brings us closer to a profoundly deep idea. Perhaps life is more flexible than we imagine. Perhaps the universe is more creative than human imagination. And perhaps the places we once called impossible are simply places we have not yet learned how to observe. As you prepare to drift into sleep tonight, imagine an ocean lying deep beneath the ice of a wandering world. Above it are kilometers of frozen ice. Farther beyond lies a sky of absolute blackness. There is no Sunday, no sunrise, no one watching, but deep within the darkness, the water may still be moving. The rocks may still be warm. Chemical reactions may still be continuing, and life may be waiting in a place where we never thought to look for it. Perhaps that is what makes the darkness of the universe seem a little less frightening. Because we no longer see darkness merely as an empty space. We begin to see it as a question. And sometimes, a beautiful question can carry us farther than an answer. So, when you close your eyes tonight, remember that somewhere out there, far beyond the lights of our cities, far beyond the familiar stars, and far beyond everything our telescopes are capable of seeing, there may exist worlds immersed in darkness. Worlds without sunrise, worlds without a Sunday, worlds that appear completely cold and silent. But deep beneath their layers of ice, there may still be heat, there may still be water, there may still be movement, and perhaps, in some way that we do not yet understand, there may still be life. For perhaps the universe does not exist only in its brightest places. Perhaps its deepest secrets are sleeping quietly in the darkness. And just like the human mind, sometimes the place we look at the least is the very place that may silently contain an entire world. Humanity finds planets without having to see them. There is something truly fascinating about the way human beings explore the universe. Sometimes, in order to know that something exists, we do not need to see it. This may sound contradictory to the way we usually understand the world. From childhood, we are taught that seeing is one way of knowing. We see the sky and know that it is bright. We see the rain and know that water is falling. We see someone standing before us and know that they are there. But the universe is far greater than the limits of what human eyes can see. Some things are too far away. Some things are too small. Some things are too dark. Some things are hidden by brighter light. And there are also things which, despite existing very clearly, may never appear directly before our eyes. Planets are a wonderful example. When we look up at the night sky, we often imagine that everything astronomers discover comes from spectacular images. A giant telescope points into the depths of space. A distant planet appears as a colorful sphere, and humanity celebrates the discovery of a new world. But reality is often much quieter than that. Most planets beyond our solar system have never been directly seen in the way we see the moon, or in the familiar images we have of Jupiter. In many cases, a planet does not appear as a clearly visible object at all. We see only the tiny changes created by its existence. And from those changes, humanity begins to reason. There is a world there, not because we can see it, but because everything around it behaves as though it exists. Perhaps that is one of the most beautiful images in science. A planet passing in front of its star can cause the star's light to decrease by an extremely small amount. If scientists observe this dimming happening again and again in a regular pattern, they may begin to ask, could an object be passing in front of the star? Another planet may not pass in front of its star from our particular viewing angle, but its gravity may cause the star to wobble slightly. The star does not remain completely still. It moves in a tiny motion, almost impossible to detect without extremely precise instruments. And from that movement, scientists ask another question: what is pulling it? An object may be completely invisible, but its gravity does not disappear completely. A planet can influence the orbits of other objects. It can alter the rhythm of an entire system's movements. It can create gravitational resonances, small deviations, and anomalies that, if observed for long enough, lead us to realize that there must be a cause behind them. A planet can also bend light. That may sound like something from science fiction, but in the universe, gravity can affect space-time and alter the path of light. When an object passes through the right position between us and a more distant source of light, the light coming from behind it can be distorted or magnified in a way that reveals the existence of the object in front. In this way, a planet does not need to shine in order to be discovered. It only needs to leave a trace, a small trace, a subtle change, a vibration, a dimming, a movement that does not behave exactly as expected. And from things that may seem insignificant, an entire world can be found. Imagine that you are lying in a quiet room at night. You cannot see anyone on the floor above. The door is closed. There are no voices. No light slips through the crack beneath the door, but then you feel the floor vibrate slightly. Once, and then again. You do not see the person walking above you, but you know that something is happening. There is a cause behind that movement. This is the deeper principle behind many scientific discoveries. We do not always see the cause. Sometimes, we see the effects that the cause leaves behind. In astronomy, this becomes an art of patience. Scientists observe a star. They do not merely look at it. They measure its light. They measure changes in its position. They measure its velocity. They measure tiny oscillations so subtle that the human eye could never detect them. Then they compare. They search for patterns. They eliminate noise. They test again. And gradually, from a tiny signal, the image of an invisible world begins to emerge. Perhaps at first, it is only a graph, a line that dips slightly, a periodic movement, an unusual number. But behind those numbers, there may be a real planet, a world with an atmosphere, perhaps with storms, perhaps with oceans, perhaps with volcanoes, or perhaps a landscape completely unfamiliar to anything we have ever imagined. The remarkable thing is that before we know what it looks like, we may already know that it exists. Before there is an image, there is a trace. Before there is certainty, there is a question. Before that world has a name, there may already be an anomaly hidden within data that once appeared meaningless. This is not only the story of planets, it is also one of the deepest ways in which human beings come to understand reality. Because we live in a world where many causes cannot be directly seen. You do not see gravity, but you see a leaf fall. You do not see the wind, but you see branches move. You do not see time, but you see a face change over the years. You do not see love as you see a physical object, but you see it in care, in the small things one person does for another. Some things exist not by appearing directly before our eyes, but through the effects they leave behind. Perhaps this is where the story of invisible planets begins to touch upon the depth that Carl Gustav Jung spent his entire life exploring. The human mind is also filled with things we cannot see directly. We often believe that we know ourselves well because we know what we are thinking. But Jung believed that consciousness is only one part of the whole of psychological life. Beneath it lie deeper layers, forgotten memories, instincts, archetypal images, unnamed fears, and forces that may influence us without appearing clearly in consciousness. We do not see the unconscious in the way we see a room, but we see its traces. We see them in dreams, in unexpected reactions, in things that frighten us without our understanding why, in choices that later make us ask ourselves, why did I do that? We do not see the entire cause, but we see the effects. Perhaps that is why the image of discovering a planet through the traces it leaves behind possesses such a particular beauty. It reminds us that not everything important appears in clear and obvious light. Some things can only be recognized when we pay attention to small changes. An unusual silence, a recurring dream, an emotion that appears with unexpected intensity, a path in life that suddenly changes its course. Perhaps we have not yet seen the cause, but that does not mean the cause does not exist. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This statement is often mentioned when discussing Jung's ideas. Forces within the mind that have not yet been recognized can still influence the course of our lives. We may not see them, name them, or even know that they exist, yet they continue to leave traces in the ways we choose and react. This is very much like an invisible planet. A planet may not appear in an image, but the star wobbles. The light changes, the orbit shifts, something is happening, and the scientist does not say, "I cannot see it, therefore it does not exist." Instead, they ask, what could be producing these traces? It is a beautiful question, because it requires humility. It asks us to admit that what we see may be only a very small part of what truly exists. Perhaps human beings often make a very natural mistake. We believe that if something does not appear clearly, then it is not important. But the universe was not constructed to conform to the way we observe it. A planet may be dark. A planet may be hidden by the light of its star. A planet may be too distant. A planet may never pass in front of its star from the angle at which we are observing. And yet, it still exists. Perhaps there are similar, invisible planets within human life. Things that happened long ago but that we no longer remember clearly. Emotions pushed too deeply beneath the surface. Dreams we forget moments after waking. Desires we have never acknowledged. They do not disappear simply because we stop looking at them. Like the gravity of a planet, they may continue to influence the orbits of other things. And sometimes, their traces are exactly where we should begin. Not with fear, not by forcing ourselves to find every answer, but through observation, gently, patiently. Like an astronomer watching a star for many years, waiting for a small change to appear in its light. There are things in life that cannot be understood immediately. There are causes that reveal themselves only gradually through time. There are secrets that do not appear when we stare directly at them, but reveal themselves through the things they cause to tremble. And this, too, is what makes science so poetic. An astronomer looks toward a tiny point of light far away. No planet appears clearly, but the light dims slightly. A signal appears. Then it repeats. A hypothesis is proposed. Many tests are carried out. And eventually, humanity realizes that tens, hundreds, or thousands of light years away, there is a world moving through the darkness. A world that no one has ever seen with the naked eye. Yet it had been there for a very long time. Humanity simply had not yet learned how to read the traces it left behind. Perhaps that is the most beautiful reflection of this section. Reality does not speak to us only through things that are obvious. Sometimes, it whispers through the smallest changes. A star becomes slightly dimmer. An orbit shifts slightly. A beam of light bends. A rhythm changes. And if we are patient enough to listen, an entire world can gradually emerge from things that once seemed to be nothing at all. As you prepare to drift into sleep tonight, try to think about that. Out there, in the darkness of the universe, there may be countless planets that we have never seen, but they still pull other objects through gravity. They still move. They still create effects. They still leave traces. And perhaps, somewhere within the inner world of our own minds, there are things like this as well. Things that have not been seen, but have not disappeared. Things that do not speak, but still create ripples. Things that have not been named, but quietly continue to influence the path we are walking. So sometimes, in order to understand something, we do not need to force ourselves to see it immediately. Perhaps we simply need to look more carefully at what is moving around it, at the traces, the vibrations, the subtle changes, because in the universe, just as in the human mind, what is invisible is not always what does not exist. Sometimes, what we are not yet able to see is already present in everything it quietly touches. Gravity. The language of invisible worlds. Perhaps one of the strangest and most beautiful things about the universe is this. A world does not need to shine in order to tell us that it exists. A planet can be completely immersed in darkness. No light of its own, no fire, no radio signals, no visible sign that human eyes could recognize. If we were far enough away, we might never know it was there. And yet, that planet still possesses something it cannot hide. Gravity. Gravity has no color, no sound. It cannot be seen with the naked eye. We cannot touch it as we touch a stone. We cannot hear it as we hear the wind. We cannot watch it drift across the sky like a cloud. And yet, we know that it exists, because everything around it must respond. A planet may emit no light, but it can pull on a star. It can alter the orbit of another world. It can create gravitational rhythms between planets. And under special conditions, it can even bend the path of light coming from a star far away in the universe. Perhaps that is what makes gravity such a strange kind of language. A world does not need to speak. It only needs to exist. And that existence begins to leave an influence behind. Imagine a completely dark room. You cannot see anyone inside. There are no voices, no lights. But as someone walks across the floor, you feel the ground tremble slightly. You do not see them, but the room has changed. There is some force, some movement, some presence. The universe is much the same. A planet may never appear directly through a telescope, yet the star beside it may wobble in a subtle rhythm. Another planet may move slightly faster or slower than expected. A beam of light traveling from millions of light years away may be deflected on its journey toward Earth. And somewhere behind all those changes, there may be a world we have never actually seen. This is one of the most astonishing aspects of modern science. We can learn to recognize the presence of an object through what it changes. We do not need to see the hand to see the surface of the water ripple. We do not need to see the wind to see the leaves move. We do not need to see a planet to observe the things its gravity touches. And the more we think about it, the more gravity begins to resemble a silent language of the universe. Every object with mass takes part in this quiet conversation. No planet is completely isolated. No star exists without influencing the space around it. Every object pulls and is pulled. Every object affects and is affected. Every object becomes part of the complex choreography of the universe. A planet orbits its star, but the star itself does not remain completely still. Both of them orbit around a common center of mass. If the planet is large enough, its gravitational pull can cause the star to wobble. And even if that motion is incredibly small, human beings can still attempt to measure it. From a movement almost impossible to notice, we begin to infer the existence of another world. Perhaps we can estimate its size. Perhaps we can determine how far it is from its star. Perhaps we can calculate how long it takes to complete one orbit. From a tiny vibration, an entire planet can slowly emerge within the scientific imagination of humanity. And that makes us realize that a very small change is not always a small thing. Sometimes, behind the faintest tremor, there is an entire world Gravity can also alter the orbits of other objects. Within a planetary system, worlds do not move independently of one another. They can pull on each other, create resonances, establish rhythmic patterns, and sometimes produce subtle deviations. One planet may become the reason another planet's orbit changes. Those changes may be extremely small, but if we observe long enough, they can become clues. And science sometimes begins with clues exactly like these. Not with a great answer, but with a question. Why is this motion different from what we expected? Why does this star wobble in this particular way? Why is the light changing? Could there be something here that we have not yet seen? That is the moment when the invisible begins to enter the world of knowledge. Not by appearing directly, but by leaving traces. And perhaps one of the strangest methods of reading those traces is gravitational microlensing. Imagine a very distant star shining through space. Its light begins a long journey toward Earth. Perhaps it has been traveling for thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands of years. Throughout its journey, that light passes through vast regions of space that appear almost completely empty. Then, at some moment, an object passes between us and that distant star. That object might be another star, a planet, or even a world that is almost completely dark. Its gravity affects the path of the light, and from our point of view, the light from the distant star may temporarily become brighter. A signal appears, then the signal disappears. During that brief moment, an object that was once invisible has revealed its presence. It is an idea that carries an almost poetic beauty. A planet does not emit light, and yet, it can be discovered by changing the light of another star. It does not speak, but it causes something else to speak. It does not appear, but it changes the universe around it enough for us to realize that something is passing by. That is the deeper nature of searching for invisible worlds. We do not always see the object itself. Sometimes, we see the shadow it creates. Sometimes, we see the ripples. Sometimes, we see only the change, and from that change, we trace our way back toward the cause. A rogue planet may drift through the darkness of interstellar space. There is no parent star beside it, no strong reflected light, no easy way to detect it. But if it passes into precisely the right position in front of a more distant star, then for a brief moment, its gravity may alter the light coming from behind it, and suddenly, that lonely world has left a trace. Perhaps it has wandered through darkness for millions or even billions of years. No living creature knew that it existed. No telescope had ever captured its image. But then, in one extraordinary moment, light from a distant star passes through a region of space affected by its gravity. The light changes. Instruments record the event. A graph appears, and human beings look at it and say, "There may be a world here." Think about the beauty of that moment. A planet may have remained in darkness for an unimaginably long time, yet somehow, its existence eventually finds a way to reach us, not through its own light, but through the influence it creates. This brings us back to a deeper reflection about the way human beings perceive reality. We often believe that what is clearly visible is what is truly real. The things we can see, measure, name. We feel safer with things that have clear forms. But neither the universe nor the human mind is made only of things that appear on the surface. Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life exploring precisely this invisible territory of the human psyche. He was deeply interested in the contents that lie beyond the direct light of consciousness. Memories, emotions, images, instincts, and motivations that we may not recognize, yet which continue to influence the way we live. The unconscious does not necessarily appear before us and explain what it is. It often leaves traces. In a dream, in an unusually strong reaction, in a fear with no obvious origin, in a pattern of choices that keeps repeating, in a feeling that even we cannot explain. And here, the image of the gravity of an invisible planet becomes a beautiful metaphor. You may not see the planet, but the orbit is changing. You may not see the gravitational force, but the star is wobbling. You may not see the object, but the light is bending. In much the same way, in our inner lives, we may not see the complete cause of an emotion, but we can notice its consequences. Something is affecting us. A memory may have been forgotten. A pain may have been buried deep. A part of our personality may remain unrecognized. But like an invisible planet, it does not necessarily disappear simply because we cannot see it. There is a reflection, often associated with the spirit of Jungian psychology. Human beings begin to understand unconscious processes, not by seeing them as physical objects, but by observing their manifestations, dreams, symbols, reactions, repeated patterns. That is also how astronomers observe the universe. They do not rush to conclusions. They do not make claims simply because they want an answer. Instead, they observe, they measure, they compare, they wait. And then, from small signals, they construct a hypothesis about what may be hidden. Perhaps we can learn something from the way science searches for planets. Not everything invisible is frightening. Sometimes, what we cannot see is simply what we have not yet understood. A rogue planet does not become frightening because it exists in darkness. We simply did not know it was there. And when we finally discover it, the darkness does not disappear. But our understanding of the darkness changes. Perhaps the same is true of the hidden things within ourselves. An emotion we cannot name may confuse us. A strange dream may leave us unsettled. A repeated reaction may cause us to blame ourselves. But sometimes, instead of trying to push it away immediately, we can observe it, as an astronomer observes an unfamiliar signal. What is changing? What keeps repeating? What created this vibration? Not to judge, but to understand, because understanding often begins with attention. In the universe, a planet may be discovered through the tiny wobble of a star. In the human mind, something deeply hidden may reveal itself through a subtle shift in emotion. Both remind us of the same truth. What is invisible can still have tremendous influence. A force we cannot see can keep Earth in orbit around the Sunday. An invisible planet can make an entire star wobble. A small object can bend light that has traveled through space for years. And a memory we believe we have forgotten can still quietly influence the way we see the world. Perhaps that is why gravity is such a beautiful symbol for the subject of hidden worlds. Gravity does not demand to be seen. It does not need to prove itself through appearance. It simply exists. And that existence is written into the movement of everything around it. When we look up at the night sky, we may think that darkness is a place where nothing exists. But science is gradually teaching us the opposite. Darkness may be filled with worlds, frozen planets, rogue planets, worlds without suns, objects too distant or too faint for our instruments to easily detect. And yet, every one of those worlds has gravity. And in its own way, every world is speaking to the universe, not through words, not through sound, but through influence, through movement, through changing orbits, through bending light. And the most remarkable thing is that we are slowly learning how to listen to that language. We place telescopes in space. We monitor millions of stars. We measure changes so small they might seem insignificant, because we know that behind a tiny signal, there may be an enormous secret. Perhaps a planet, perhaps an entire planetary system, perhaps a lonely world drifting through the darkness. And before you close your eyes tonight, try to hold one image in your mind. Somewhere far away, there may be a planet completely immersed in darkness. No sunrise, no sunset, no one looking at it. And yet, it still exists. It still moves. It still has gravity. And in a rare moment, light from a distant star passes near it, bending because of that silent presence. For one brief moment, the universe trembles with a tiny signal, and human beings, on another distant planet, may notice that change. Perhaps that is one of the gentlest miracles of science. We do not always need to see a world to know that it is there. Sometimes, All we need to do is observe how it changes everything around it. Because in the universe, just as within the human mind, there are things that never appear directly in the light, yet they still have weight. They still create ripples. They still alter the paths of other things. And sometimes, if we become quiet enough, patient enough, attentive enough to the smallest vibrations, we begin to realize that darkness was never truly empty. It was simply waiting for us to learn how to read the traces that existence leaves behind, planets that appear for only a few hours. There are worlds in the universe that may exist for billions of years. Yet the opportunity for human beings to recognize their existence can sometimes last only a few hours. It is one of the most beautiful paradoxes in astronomy. A planet may have been born billions of years ago. It may have passed through turbulent periods in the history of the universe. It may have witnessed stars being born and eventually fading away. It may have drifted through the darkness of space for longer than the entire history of humanity. And yet, the one moment when we are able to recognize that it exists may last only a few hours. Then the signal disappears, and the world returns to darkness. This is what makes gravitational microlensing so extraordinary. When an object moves into the right position between us and a very distant background star, the gravity of that object can affect the path of the star's light. From Earth, we may observe the background star temporarily becoming brighter. If the object creating the effect is a large star, the event may last longer. But if the object is a small planet, especially one with a mass close to that of Earth, the planetary signal may last for only a very short period, a few hours, an amount of time that seems almost insignificant when compared with the age of a planet. Think about that. A world may exist for billions of years, but in order to know that it exists, we may need to be looking at the sky during the exact few hours that matter in its entire history. If we observe too early, we see nothing. If we observe too late, we see nothing either. Only during a particular moment do the movements of Earth, the planet, the distant light source, and the observer accidentally form the perfect alignment. The light bends, the brightness changes, an instrument records a signal, and during that brief window of time, an invisible planet can reveal a trace of its existence. Then, everything returns to normal. The light fades. The observed curve returns to its usual shape. The signal disappears. Not because the planet has disappeared. It is still there, still moving, still possessing gravity, still continuing its journey. Only the window of observation has closed. This makes the search for planets through microlensing feel like a strange meeting between science and time. You cannot simply point a telescope toward a known planet and observe it whenever you wish. You must wait for a special alignment. You must monitor enormous numbers of stars. You must measure their light continuously. You must be prepared for changes that could occur at any moment. Because when the signal appears, there may be very little time, and if that moment passes without anyone observing it, the world may disappear once again from our ability to detect it. Perhaps this is what gives the subject such a different kind of beauty. Normally, we imagine that because the universe is vast, everything within it must move slowly. Stars live for millions or billions of years. Galaxies move across timescales so immense that a human lifetime is little more than the blink of an eye. But within those enormous processes, there are also extraordinarily brief moments. A few hours, a small change in the light, a curve appearing on a screen, and hidden inside that signal may be evidence of an entirely new world. It forces us to think about time differently. Some things exist for an incredibly long time, yet reveal themselves only briefly. Some events happen in a moment but take years for us to understand. Some signals are always possible around us, yet can only be recognized when all the necessary conditions happen to come together. And perhaps that is the most astonishing thought of all. Perhaps the universe is constantly sending us signals, but we are simply not looking at the right time. That thought is not only about telescopes. It is also about the limits of attention. Human beings often assume that if something is important, it will appear clearly. If something exists, we will see it. If something happens, surely we will notice. But the universe does not work that way. A signal may be too brief. A planet may be too dark. A change may be too small. An event may occur while we are looking somewhere else. And so, not seeing something does not mean that it does not exist. Sometimes, it simply means that we were not there at the right moment. Imagine a person standing beside the ocean at night. The vast sea in front of them is almost impossible to see. The surface of the water disappears into darkness. Then, far away, a single wave catches the moonlight for one brief moment. It flashes, and then it disappears. If you happened to be looking down at the ground at that instant, you would never know that it had appeared. But the ocean was still there. The wave was still there. The light simply touched it for only a moment. Perhaps micro-lensing is like that. A planet does not suddenly appear. It simply passes through a moment when its presence can be seen. Science, in one sense, is the art of preparing ourselves not to miss moments like these. Astronomers build networks of telescopes. They observe crowded regions of the sky containing millions of stars. They continuously record changes in brightness. Automated systems search for unusual signals, because no human being can stare at the sky with the naked eye every moment of every day. So we build instruments capable of being patient on our behalf. Machines that do not grow tired. Systems that continue watching, continuing to measure, continuing to wait for the smallest change. And when the signal appears, scientists must act quickly, because a few hours may be all they have. One fascinating aspect of microlensing is that these events often cannot be conveniently repeated. Once the objects continue along their paths, the special alignment that created the event may never occur again within the lifetimes of the people who observed it. This makes every event feel like a meeting between objects separated by unimaginable distances, a distant source of light, an invisible planet, an observer on Earth, and time. Everything must come together in a precise configuration. If even one element was slightly different, we might see nothing at all. This makes us think about the fragility of discovery. There may be millions of worlds existing around us, but the number of worlds we actually know depends partly on the observational windows that nature allows. One planet may never pass in front of its star from Earth's point of view. Another may not produce a strong enough wobble for us to measure. Yet another may reveal itself only during a brief microlensing event. The universe may be full of signals, but our ability to recognize them depends on whether we have enough tools, enough patience, and sometimes enough luck. And here, once again, the story of the universe begins to touch deeper reflections about human beings themselves. Carl Gustav Jung paid great attention to things that appear in the mind indirectly. The unconscious does not always stand before us as a clear answer. Sometimes it appears in a dream, a symbol, a sudden memory, a passing emotion, an image that seems meaningless. And if we ignore it, that moment may pass. That does not mean the hidden thing within us has disappeared. It still exists, but the opportunity to recognize it in that particular form may have closed. This is also why Jung was deeply interested in dreams. Dreams often arrive at night. They can be filled with strange images, unfamiliar faces, houses that do not exist, roads we have never traveled. Then we wake up. During the first few minutes, the dream may still feel incredibly clear, but if we do not pay attention, it begins to dissolve. A detail disappears. A face becomes blurred. A story that once felt vivid leaves behind only a feeling that is difficult to name. Some dreams are like a microlensing signal of the mind. They appear, they shine, and then slowly return to darkness. Jung once wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." If we imagine a dream as a small door leading into the deepest and most private regions of the soul. Perhaps we can understand why fleeting moments can matter so much. A door may remain open only briefly. A signal may last only a few hours. A thought may appear for only a moment, but that does not make it meaningless. On the contrary, sometimes its briefness is precisely what reminds us to pay attention. Not everything important lasts forever. A sunset exists for only a short time. A shooting star flashes for only a few seconds. A sentence may be spoken in a minute and remembered for a lifetime. A meeting may be brief and yet transform an entire person. A planet may exist for billions of years, yet have only a few hours to tell us that it is there. Perhaps that is why science is not simply about seeing. It is also an art of presence, being present at the right moment, observing long enough, not overlooking small things, because we never know when the next signal will arrive. A slight change in the light of a distant star may become evidence of a planet. A passing dream may suggest something we are trying to understand about ourselves. A sudden emotion may tell us that something within the soul is asking to be heard. That does not mean every emotion is a secret that must be decoded. Nor does it mean every dream contains a mystical message. But it reminds us of an attitude, attention, patience, and humility before what we do not yet understand. Because there are many things we fail to see simply because we were not present at the right time. Perhaps a signal appeared in the data, but we did not yet have the tools to recognize it. Perhaps a planet once passed through a perfect alignment, but at that moment, the telescope was looking somewhere else. Perhaps a dream brought us an important image, but the next morning, we were too busy to remember it. All of this suggests a gentle thought. Reality does not necessarily wait for us to be ready. The universe continues moving, light continues traveling, planets continue orbiting, events continue unfolding, and signals may continue appearing while we are busy looking in another direction. Perhaps the only thing we can do is expand our capacity to observe. In science, that means building better telescopes, more continuous systems of observation, algorithms capable of recognizing subtle changes. In our inner lives, perhaps it is something simpler. Sometimes, it means simply stopping, listening to an emotion, remembering a dream, recognizing a pattern that keeps repeating, not rushing, not forcing, simply observing, like looking toward a dark region of the sky and patiently waiting for a small change in the light. And before you drift deeper into sleep tonight, try to imagine a small planet moving somewhere far away. Perhaps it has no Sunday. Perhaps it is drifting alone between the stars. Perhaps it has existed in darkness for billions of years. No one knows its name. No one has ever seen its surface. But then, for a few brief hours, it moves into exactly the right position. The light of a distant star is bent. A signal appears. And somewhere on Earth, an instrument records that tiny change. An invisible world has just whispered, "I am here." Then the signal disappears. But the planet continues its journey. Perhaps the universe has always been like this, filled with worlds existing beyond our sight, filled with fleeting signals, filled with moments that can only be recognized if we are patient enough to observe. And perhaps that is what makes discovery so beautiful. We never completely know what we will find. We simply continue looking, continue listening, continue waiting, because somewhere in the darkness, perhaps at this very moment, an invisible planet is passing through exactly the right position for the light of another star to change. A signal is appearing, a moment is opening, and if we are fortunate, if we are looking in the right place, at the right time, then during those few brief hours, a world that has existed for billions of years may be known by humanity for the very first time, and then it returns to darkness, not because it has disappeared, but because the brief encounter between light, gravity, and human attention has come to an end. And once again, we are reminded, perhaps the universe has never truly been silent. Perhaps it has always been sending us countless signals. It is simply that sometimes we have not yet learned how to look long enough, and sometimes We only need to happen to look up at the sky during the exact few extraordinary hours in the life of a world that has drifted alone through darkness for billions of years. The blind spots of technology. There is something that can easily mislead us when we stand before the achievements of modern science. We may begin to believe that everything we can see is everything that exists. But the universe has never promised us that. Each time a new telescope is built, we are able to see farther. Each time a method of observation is improved, we discover worlds that were once completely invisible to us. And every time this happens, we are confronted with a truth that is both humbling and extraordinary. The universe did not suddenly become more crowded at the moment we discovered it. Those worlds were already there. We simply did not yet have a way to recognize them. In the search for planets beyond our solar system, every method is like a window opened onto an enormous wall. Through each window, we can see part of the landscape, but it would be a mistake to believe that the part we see through that window is the entire world on the other side. The transit method is a beautiful example. We detect a planet when it passes in front of its star from our point of view on Earth. When this happens, the light from the star decreases by an extremely small amount. From that tiny dip in brightness, scientists can infer that a world is passing by. But think about its limitation. A planet may absolutely exist. It may orbit its star steadily for billions of years. But if its orbit is not aligned at the right angle from our point of view, it may never pass in front of the star. And so, we will never see it using this method, not because it does not exist, but because we are standing in the wrong place to see it. That is an enormously important distinction. In astronomy, sometimes a world is absent from our data, not because it is absent from the universe, but because our method was never designed to recognize the kind of signal it produces. The radial velocity method has its own limitations. A planet orbiting a star is not simply moving alone. It also pulls on the star through gravity. In reality, both objects orbit around a common center of mass. If the planet is large enough or close enough, the motion of the star may be measured through extremely subtle changes in its light. But a smaller planet, a more distant planet, or one whose gravitational influence is simply too weak, may not produce a signal clear enough for us to detect. It is still orbiting, still existing, still moving through its own corner of the universe. It may possess mountains, oceans, ice, or storms that no human being has ever imagined. And yet, our instruments may not be sensitive enough to hear its gravitational whisper. That is one way to understand the blind spots of technology. Technology does not simply expand our ability to observe. It also shapes what we are capable of recognizing. We tend to detect strong signals more easily. Large objects, obvious changes, but things that are smaller, colder, more distant, and quieter may exist beyond the boundaries of our attention. Then there is direct imaging. It sounds simple enough. If we want to know whether a planet exists, why not simply take a picture of it? But reality is far more difficult. A planet often exists close to a brilliantly bright star. The light of the star can be so powerful that it completely overwhelms the small world beside it. Trying to see a planet next to its star can sometimes be like trying to find a faint point of light beside an overwhelmingly bright lamp. As a result, planets that are sufficiently bright, large, or widely separated from their stars are much easier to photograph. But what about the smaller worlds? They may still be there. They may have been orbiting in darkness for millions of years. But we may simply not yet have found a way to reduce the overwhelming light that hides them. And there is something worth reflecting on here. Sometimes, the thing that prevents us from seeing something is not darkness. Sometimes, it is too much light. The same may be true in human life. Some things are not hidden because there is too little information. They are hidden because there is too much. Too many voices, too many images, too many urgent demands, too many things competing for our attention. And among all that brightness, A small signal can become almost invisible. The method of gravitational microlensing reveals another kind of limitation. It can help us discover objects that other methods struggle to find, including cold and distant planets, and even rogue planets that do not orbit a star. But microlensing depends on a special arrangement of objects in space. A distant source of light, an object passing in front of it, an observer positioned in the right place, and everything must align with sufficient precision. The event happens, the light changes, then the event ends, and in many cases, it may never repeat. A world may reveal its existence for only a few hours. If we are not watching at the right moment, the opportunity may disappear. This leads to a thought that is both beautiful and humbling. Perhaps the universe does not have nothing to say to us. Perhaps we simply have not been present at the right moment to listen. Then there is astrometry, the extraordinarily precise measurement of the positions and movements of stars. A planet can cause its host star to move slightly around their common center of mass. But the movement may be so small that measuring it requires astonishing precision. And once again, we encounter a limitation. Some things exist, but the traces they leave are too subtle. They are not completely invisible. They simply lie below the threshold of what we are currently able to distinguish. When we place all these methods side by side, we begin to see something important. Every method has a region where it is powerful, and every method has a region where it is blind. Transit is excellent at finding planets whose orbits align favorably with our line of sight. Radial velocity is effective at detecting sufficiently strong gravitational influences. Direct imaging allows us to see certain worlds under particularly favorable conditions. Microlensing opens the possibility of discovering dark and distant objects, but often only during brief and unrepeatable moments. Astrometry can reveal subtle movements in stars, but demands extraordinary precision. No single method can see everything. And because of that, the list of planets humanity has discovered is not a complete map of all the planets that exist. It is more like a map, drawn using many different kinds of lamps. Each lamp illuminates one region. Each instrument reveals another part of the landscape, and between those regions of light, there are still areas of darkness. But darkness is not evidence of emptiness. That may be the most important idea of all. Not detecting something does not mean that it does not exist. This principle carries enormous importance in science. True science does not simply say, "We have not seen it, therefore it is not there." Science is usually more careful. It says, "We have not seen it using our current methods." Those two statements are completely different. The first closes the door. The second keeps the door open. And it is precisely that difference that has carried humanity farther. Throughout the history of science, many things existed long before we were capable of seeing them. Bacteria existed before human beings invented microscopes. Distant galaxies existed before telescopes became powerful enough to observe them. Radio waves existed before we developed instruments capable of detecting them. Planets beyond our solar system existed long before we discovered their first faint signals. Reality does not begin at the moment we observe it. It merely begins to appear on the map of our understanding. Perhaps this is where astronomy meets a deeper reflection about the human mind. Carl Gustav Jung was deeply interested in regions that consciousness cannot observe directly. He did not believe that the conscious part of the mind represented the entirety of a human being. Behind the thoughts we recognize, the choices we are aware of, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, there may be deeper layers of psychological life. Jung referred to an important part of this territory as the unconscious. In the spirit of his psychological thought, there is a powerful idea often associated with him. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The meaning of this idea is not that every event in life is controlled by some mysterious hidden force. Rather, it suggests that what we do not recognize about ourselves can still influence our thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Like an invisible planet, We may not see it directly, but we may see its effects, a recurring emotion, a dream that appears again and again, a pattern of relationships that always seems to lead to the same result, a fear with no obvious origin, a reaction far stronger than the present situation seems to require. These things do not necessarily mean that we have immediately discovered their cause, but they may be signals, small disturbances, changes in the orbit of our inner lives. And sometimes, we are like astronomers. We do not see directly what is influencing us. We see the consequences, and then we begin to ask questions. What is there? What is influencing this movement? Is there something I have not yet recognized? But here, an important caution is necessary. Not every emotion is a profound symbol. Not every dream needs to be decoded into a hidden message. The lesson we can take from Jung is not to turn everything into mystery. It is to learn to acknowledge that consciousness itself has limits. We do not know everything about ourselves, just as we do not see every planet. And acknowledging that does not make us weaker. It makes us more humble. Perhaps that is also the greatest lesson of the blind spots of technology. Every tool has limitations. Every method contains regions it cannot observe. And every human being has blind spots of their own. We see the world through our senses, our language, our memories, our experiences, and our assumptions. That means two people can look at the same event and recognize completely different things. Not necessarily because one of them is lying, but because each person is looking through a different window. And perhaps maturity does not mean believing that we have already seen the entire room. Perhaps it means knowing that behind the wall where we are standing, there may still be doors we have not opened. The same is true of the universe. Every planet we discover does not necessarily make the mystery smaller. Often, it makes the mystery larger, because every new world creates new questions. If this world exists, what other kinds of worlds might exist? If a planet can drift freely through space, how many other rogue planets may be out there? If small planets are difficult to detect, could they be far more numerous than the larger planets we have already found? If our current technology has blind spots, what will the telescopes of the future reveal? And perhaps one day, some of the empty spaces on our current maps will be filled. But even then, new empty spaces may appear. That is not a failure of science. It is the nature of discovery. Every answer opens a new territory of questions. Every new light reveals how vast the darkness still is. So before we continue this journey, hold on to one gentle thought. When you look up at the night sky and see the stars, do not assume that the darkness between them is empty. There may be planets there, cold worlds, lonely worlds, oceans hidden beneath layers of ice, planets orbiting stars too distant for us to observe clearly, planets too small to produce a detectable signal, worlds that have never appeared in any human catalogue. They may still be there, unnamed, unphotographed, without a single point marking them on our maps. But their silence is not evidence that they do not exist. And perhaps this is a peaceful thought to carry with you into sleep tonight. Not everything that has not been seen is empty. Not everything that has not been understood is meaningless. Not everything that has not appeared before our eyes is non-existent. Sometimes, it simply lies beyond the limits of our present ability to observe, like a planet orbiting in darkness, like a signal too faint for us to hear, like a star that has never been given a name, and like the deeper regions within the human soul, they may still be there, quietly, patiently, waiting for the day when we have enough light, or enough silence, to finally realize. Not detecting something does not mean that it does not exist. Hidden worlds within star systems. When we look up at the night sky, we often feel that the most distant things must also be the most mysterious. Galaxies near the edge of the observable universe. Stars millions of light years away. Regions of space so distant that light must travel for unimaginable lengths of time before reaching human eyes. But sometimes, the strangest mysteries are not found in the most distant places. Some secrets are very close. Close, at least, by the standards of the universe. They may be orbiting stars that we have been observing for a very long time. Stars with names in astronomical catalogues. Stars whose mass, temperature, and distance have already been measured. Star systems that we believe we understand reasonably well. And yet, somewhere in their darker outer regions, a planet may still be moving silently, one that we have never noticed. That is one of the things that makes the universe feel both vast and strangely humbling. A planetary system is not a static object. It is not like a photograph that we only need to look at once in order to understand. It is a story unfolding through time. Planets move. Orbits change, sometimes very slowly. Gravity acts back and forth between objects. And distant bodies may take so long to complete a single orbit that an entire human lifetime witnesses only a small fraction of their journey. A planet close to its star may complete an orbit in only a few days, months, or years. We can observe it repeatedly. We can recognize recurring patterns. We can measure its motion and gradually build a relatively clear picture of its existence. But when a planet lies very far from its star, everything changes. The distance becomes greater, the orbital period becomes longer, and time itself becomes part of the problem. One planet may take decades to complete a single orbit. Another may take hundreds of years. Farther still, an orbital period may become so long that several generations of human beings must continue the same work of observation. Try to imagine that. An astronomer begins observing a star while still young. They record its position, measure its light, follow its subtle changes. Years pass. The astronomer grows old. Another generation continues the work, and then another. Meanwhile, the planet they are searching for may not yet have completed a single orbit. In an age when human beings have become accustomed to instant answers, there is something deeply beautiful about that image. A task that no individual can complete within a single lifetime. A question asked today that may not be answered for decades. A small measurement carefully preserved so that someone not yet born can one day use it. That is a kind of faith. Faith that observation today, even without an immediate answer, can still matter tomorrow. Because not every secret of the universe can be solved with a faster computer. A supercomputer can process billions of calculations in a short time. An algorithm can search for patterns the human eye might never notice. Artificial intelligence can analyze enormous collections of data, but there is one thing that no technology can completely replace: time. If a planet needs 100 years to complete an orbit, we cannot force it to move faster. We cannot ask the universe to accelerate simply because human beings want an answer immediately. We can build better telescopes. We can measure more precisely. We can calculate more quickly. But sometimes, we still have to wait for the planet to continue its journey. Perhaps that is one of the quietest lessons astronomy offers humanity. Not every problem can be solved by moving faster. Some questions require more data. Some data can only appear as time passes. And some things become clear only when we are patient enough to observe them for a long time. A planet far from its star is also often more difficult to detect because our observational methods tend to favor worlds that produce strong signals. A small planet orbiting close to its star may create changes that are easier to recognize, but a distant planet may produce a weaker and slower gravitational influence. It may never pass in front of its star from our point of view. It may not be bright enough for direct imaging. If it is extremely cold, even its thermal radiation may be difficult to detect. And so, a world can fall into an almost perfect region of invisibility. It does not fail to exist. It simply does not produce the kind of signal that our current methods can easily recognize. Imagine a star system as a very large house in darkness. We are standing in one room with a small flashlight in our hands. We shine the light into one corner and discover an object. We shine it into another corner and find something else. After a while, we begin drawing a map of the room, but the beam of our flashlight reaches only so far. The distant corridors remain dark. Other doors remain unopened. Rooms beyond the reach of the light have not yet been explored. If we then say, "There is nothing there because I cannot see anything," perhaps we have forgotten the limitations of the flashlight. Modern astronomy is sometimes very much like this. We are not only exploring the universe, we are also learning to recognize the limitations of the tools we use to explore it. And perhaps this is one of the deepest beauties of science. Science does not merely create knowledge, it also helps us understand more clearly what we do not yet know. A planetary system that appears complete today may one day reveal another planet, or a known planet may turn out to have smaller companions. The outer regions of a star system may contain cold objects moving slowly through darkness. A system that once appeared simple may prove to be far more complex than we imagined. And the interesting thing is that we do not always have to travel to the farthest reaches of the universe to encounter such surprises. Even our own solar system has continually expanded within human understanding. There was a time when people knew only a limited number of worlds. Then telescopes extended our vision. New planets were discovered. New moons were recognized. Icy worlds in the outer regions began to appear on our maps. And even today, the distant regions of our solar system still contain many things we do not fully understand. If even our own cosmic home still contains mysteries, then star systems hundreds or thousands of light years away must surely contain even more things that remain difficult to detect. Perhaps somewhere around a star that we have observed for many years, a small planet is completing an orbit that lasts hundreds of years. Perhaps at this moment, it is on the far side of its star. Perhaps its signal is too weak. Perhaps its orbit is not aligned in the right way for the transit method. Perhaps its gravitational influence is hidden within the noise of the data. But every year, its position changes slightly, very slowly, almost imperceptibly. In a single day, insignificant over a week. But after many years, the picture may begin to change. That is why scientists sometimes need observational programs that last for decades. Not because they lack intelligence, but because the objects they study move according to a different rhythm of time. Human beings live quickly. A day begins and ends. A year passes. A generation appears and grows old. But a distant planet may experience an entire human lifetime as only a brief moment within its orbit. The universe does not hurry. Planets do not hurry. Stars do not hurry. And when we try to understand them, sometimes we must also learn to slow down. Here, thoughts about the universe begin to touch an idea familiar from the psychology of Carl Gustav Jung. Jung did not view human development as a race toward reaching a state of completion as quickly as possible. Psychological life, in many respects, is a gradual process. A person may not understand themselves in a single day. Some things become clear only when we look back across a long stretch of life. An experience from youth may not truly be understood until many years later. A choice that once confused us may slowly find meaning when placed within the larger story of our lives. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." There is something in this sentence that feels deeply connected to the idea of time. Becoming oneself is not an action that happens in a single moment. It is a process. Some parts of who we are appear only when enough time has passed. Like a distant planet, you cannot demand that it reveal itself earlier simply because you want to see it. You can only continue observing, continue living, continue experiencing, and one day, something that once seemed impossible to understand may naturally become clear, not because it has just been born, but because, at last, you have traveled far enough to see it. Perhaps that is something we often forget in a world that constantly demands quick answers. We want to understand immediately, to know immediately, to solve immediately, to heal immediately, to see results immediately. But some things within the mind do not operate at the speed of a machine. A pain may need time before we can give it the right name. A transformation may require years to take shape. A person may have to pass through many experiences before understanding what they are truly searching for. Not because we are slow, but because some journeys are meant to take time. Jung also wrote a famous sentence, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And although life is always influenced by the past, these words suggest something important. A human being is not a finished result. We are a process that continues. There are parts of us still moving, still searching for their orbit, still not yet having completed a full circle. And perhaps we should not be too quick to draw conclusions about something while its story is still unfolding. A star system is like that as well. We may observe it for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, but if one of its planets requires hundreds of years to complete an orbit, we are still seeing only a very small part of the story. And so, sometimes the most scientific answer is not, "We know," but rather, "We have not observed long enough." There is a special beauty in that sentence. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a form of honesty. Science is not weak when it says, "We do not yet know." On the contrary, the ability to admit we do not yet know is precisely what allows science to continue searching. And perhaps in human life, we can offer ourselves the same patience. You do not need to understand everything about your life right now. You do not need an answer to every question. You do not need to know exactly who you will become many years from now. Some planets require hundreds of years to complete a single orbit. Some stars must be observed across generations. And some things within ourselves can only be understood after enough time has passed. So sometimes, the wisest thing is not to search for a faster answer. It is to continue observing, continue listening, continue living, and wait to see what the small movements of time will eventually reveal. Perhaps that is why the story of hidden planets can feel so peaceful. They remind us that the universe does not need to reveal all of its secrets immediately. A planet may be there. We may not see it yet, but we can continue observing. A signal may not yet be clear enough. We can continue collecting data. A question may not yet have an answer. We can continue waiting. And in a world that constantly urges us to move faster, know more, and understand more, the universe seems to whisper something entirely different. Not everything needs to be solved right now. Not every mystery opens when we want it to. Some doors open only when the time is right. Some planets reveal themselves only after decades of observation. Some truths become clear only after we have lived long enough to recognize the complete pattern. So before continuing this journey, try to imagine a distant star system. At its center, a star is shining. Near it, perhaps we already know several planets. They orbit quickly. They are relatively easy to observe. Their names have already been entered into astronomical catalogues. But far beyond them, in the dark region where the light of the star has become only a small point in the sky, there may be another world. A cold planet, a lonely planet, moving slowly. It does not know that human beings are searching for it. It does not know that we have built telescopes to observe the sky. It simply continues following its orbit, year after year, century after century, and perhaps one day, after decades of collecting data, a scientist will notice a small change, a wobble, a movement, a pattern that cannot be easily explained. And from that, a new world will appear on the map, not because it has just been born, but because, at last, we have waited long enough to see it. And perhaps that is the gentlest lesson hidden star systems can offer us before the night grows deeper. Do not be too quick to conclude that something does not exist simply because you have not seen it. Do not be too quick to believe that a story has ended simply because you do not yet understand its meaning. Do not be too quick to think that you must have every answer right now. Because the universe has existed for billions of years, the planets are still moving, the mysteries are still resting in darkness, and sometimes, after all the telescopes, equations, and powerful machines, science is left with one of the simplest tasks of all, a task that modern human beings often find difficult: waiting. waiting for a planet to travel a little farther along its orbit, waiting for a signal to become clear, waiting for time to complete the part of the work that technology cannot replace. And perhaps, within that waiting, a world that has remained hidden for a very long time will slowly step out of the darkness. Planet 9, a mystery in our own cosmic backyard. There is something truly strange about looking up at the night sky and thinking about distant planets. We often imagine that the greatest mysteries of the universe must exist in places millions of light years away. They must belong to galaxies humanity has never reached, regions of space so distant that even light must travel for millions of years to carry their images to human eyes. We tend to think that mystery always lives far away, but sometimes, the greatest mystery may be much closer than we imagine. It may exist within our own solar system, right in our cosmic backyard, in a place humanity has observed through telescopes for hundreds of years, a place where we have sent spacecraft, robots, and radio signals, a place we once believed we understood fairly well. And then a question appears, a question that still has no final answer. Beyond the known planets, far outside the orbit of Neptune, could another large world still exist? A planet that has never been seen, a planet that has never been photographed, a planet whose existence, so far, has only been suggested by the strange movements of other objects. Scientists call this hypothesis Planet 9, the ninth planet. And perhaps the most fascinating part of this story is not simply the possibility that Planet 9 might be real. It is the deeper idea behind it. Perhaps something can continue to exist, continue to exert influence, and continue to quietly shape the world around it, even when we have never seen it. Far from the sun, beyond regions of space where sunlight becomes faint, lies a vast and freezing frontier. It is nothing like the familiar world we know. From such distances, the sun would no longer appear as a gigantic sphere dominating the sky. It would look more like an unusually bright star. Its light would grow weaker, the temperature would fall to extreme levels, and time itself would seem to take on a different meaning. An object orbiting the sun at such a great distance might require hundreds of years, thousands of years, or even longer to complete a single orbit. For human beings, a year is a familiar cycle. Spring arrives, then summer, autumn, winter. A year passes, and we experience time through small and familiar changes. But for a world located in the distant outer regions of the solar system, one journey around the sun could last so long that several generations of human beings might be born and disappear before it completes its path. Perhaps this is one of the reasons the universe makes us feel so small. Not because we are unimportant, but because our measures of time are so brief. We live in moments. The universe operates across spans of time so vast that the human mind can barely comprehend them completely. And it is in this distant region that scientists began to notice something intriguing. Some objects in the outer solar system appear to have orbital characteristics that caused researchers to ask questions. Why do some of these orbits seem to share certain patterns or unusual alignments? Is it simply coincidence? Or is there a deeper cause? One possibility emerged. Perhaps there is a large object that we have not yet observed. A planet with enough gravitational influence to affect the movements of smaller objects over extremely long periods of time. If Planet 9 truly exists, it would not need to shine. It would not need to send a signal. It would not need to appear clearly in a photograph. It would only need mass. It would only need to exist. Gravity would do the rest. That is the strange beauty of gravity. You cannot see it. You cannot hold it. You cannot hear it. But you can observe the consequences it creates. A distant object changes its orbit. A movement does not entirely match our predictions. A pattern begins to emerge from data that once seemed scattered and unrelated. And from those tiny clues, human beings begin to ask, could something be there? Could something we cannot see be quietly creating these movements? The question may sound purely astronomical, but if we look more deeply, it also comes surprisingly close to the way Carl Gustav Jung thought about the inner world of human beings. Jung was deeply interested in the forces that exist beneath the surface of consciousness. The things we cannot see directly, memories that are no longer clearly present, forgotten emotions, hidden tendencies, images that appear in dreams. For Jung, the part of ourselves that we consciously know may represent only a small portion of our complete psychological life. Beneath the light of consciousness lie deeper layers that we cannot directly observe. But that does not mean they have disappeared. On the contrary, they may continue to influence our thoughts, emotions, choices, and behavior. An emotion we cannot name may still make us sad. A memory we no longer clearly remember may still influence the way we react. A fear we believe we have forgotten may still cause our hearts to race. We may not see the cause, but we can see the movements it creates. This is what makes Planet 9 such a fascinating image. A planet may exist far beyond the familiar region of light. No one sees it, yet scientists search for it by observing how the things around it move. Perhaps many things in life are like that as well. There are things we cannot observe directly, but we may recognize them through traces, through dreams, through patterns that repeat themselves, through emotions that appear without an obvious reason, through paths in life that we seem to travel again and again. Perhaps every human being has a few Planet 9s within the mind, things far beyond the immediate reach of consciousness. Invisible forces, yet forces that may quietly influence the orbit of a life. And it is important to remember that Jung did not see the darkness of the mind as merely a frightening place. Darkness can also contain what has not yet been discovered. A dark room does not mean that the room is empty. It simply means that we have not turned on the light. The universe may be the same. A region of the sky that has not been observed does not mean that nothing exists there. It may simply mean that our eyes have not reached far enough, or our instruments are not yet powerful enough, or perhaps we simply have not observed long enough. If Planet 9 truly exists, it may be moving extremely slowly across the sky, so slowly that detecting it could require extraordinary patience. Perhaps it lies in a region we have not observed at the right moment. Perhaps the sunlight reflecting from its surface is too faint. Perhaps its orbit is simply too distant. Or perhaps the Planet 9 hypothesis will eventually be replaced by an entirely different explanation. This is important to remember. Planet 9 remains an unconfirmed hypothesis. Science does not become weak by admitting this. On the contrary, one of the greatest strengths of science is its ability to say, "We do not know yet." Those three words can sometimes be more difficult to say than we realize. Human beings often want an answer. We want to know what is true, what is false, what exists, what does not exist. But the universe does not always give us answers immediately. Sometimes it gives us only a few clues, a few movements, a few anomalies, and then it asks us to wait for more data, to wait for more observations, to wait for a new generation of telescopes, to wait for a new idea, to wait for someone who looks at the same old data and notices something that everyone else has missed. Perhaps this is also a gentle lesson for human beings. Not every mystery needs to be solved immediately. Not every question requires an answer tonight. Some things simply need to be left alone, observed, listened to, and waited for. When we lie down and prepare to sleep, the mind can become a little like the sky outside. During the day, it is full of light, full of voices, full of work, full of things that need to be done. But when night arrives, more distant things begin to appear, thoughts we did not notice during the day, a memory, a face, an old dream, a feeling without a name. They appear like stars that can only be seen when the sky becomes dark enough. Perhaps this is why night has always had such a strange relationship with reflection. When the outside world becomes quieter, we begin to hear the inner world more clearly. And perhaps, somewhere within that darkness, there are also planets quietly moving in orbit. Possibilities that have not yet been discovered. Parts of ourselves that have not yet been understood. Dreams that have not yet been interpreted. Questions we do not yet know how to name. Planet 9 reminds us that even within the solar system, the region of the universe most familiar to us, great mysteries may still remain. And if that is true, then beyond our solar system, among the hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way, how many worlds have we never seen? How many planets are orbiting unfamiliar stars? How many worlds are wandering through the darkness without a sun? How many oceans lie beneath permanent layers of ice? How many skies have never been looked upon by any living creature? And how many of these things may be existing right now? Not in imagination, but in reality. We simply have not found them yet. Perhaps this is what makes the universe so beautiful. Not because we already know everything, but because we know that we do not. Every unanswered mystery is like a door that remains closed. And behind that door, there may be a world, a planet, an ocean, a form of life, or something that we do not yet even have the language to describe. So when we think about Planet 9, perhaps we do not need to rush immediately toward the question, is it real? That is certainly an important question. But there is another question that may be deeper and even more beautiful. If even within our own solar system, a place humanity has observed for centuries, a great mystery may still remain unsolved, then how much do we truly know about the universe? And beyond that, how much do we truly know about ourselves? Perhaps one day, Planet 9 will finally be found. A telescope may capture the faint sunlight reflected from its surface. A tiny point of light may appear on a screen, and humanity will discover that, for all those years, an entire world had been quietly existing in the distant darkness. Or perhaps we will discover that the unusual orbital patterns have an entirely different explanation. Whatever the result may be, the search itself still has value, because every time we search for something invisible, we learn something about the limits of our own vision. And sometimes, the most important thing is not to find the answer immediately. It is to learn how to live with a question, calmly, curiously, and patiently, because perhaps, somewhere far beyond the familiar light of the Sunday, a world is still moving quietly, slowly, alone, unknown, unnamed, yet still existing. And perhaps, like so many things in the universe, the truth does not need us to see it in order to be true. It simply needs time, until one day we become patient enough, sensitive enough, and ready enough to finally realize some worlds have been there all along. We simply have not been looking in the right direction. Mathematics can find a planet before humans ever see it. Perhaps one of the strangest and most beautiful things about the universe is that we often assume its greatest mysteries must lie in its most distant places. We imagine galaxies millions of light years away, stars that have never been given names, planets orbiting suns whose light has never reached human eyes. But sometimes, the mystery is not waiting at the edge of the universe. Sometimes, it may be much closer. It may exist within our own solar system, in a region so dark and distant that even today, humanity cannot say with complete certainty that we have seen everything that is there. That is what makes the hypothesis of Planet 9 so fascinating. Far beyond Neptune, where sunlight has become incredibly weak, scientists have observed several small objects with unusual orbital characteristics. Their movements raise an intriguing question. Could there be something, somewhere in that vast region of darkness, with enough mass to quietly influence them? Perhaps it is a planet we have never seen, a world that does not shine with its own light, positioned so far away that it reflects too little sunlight for current telescopes to easily detect. And if Planet 9 truly exists, it may have been there for a very long time. Perhaps it was silently orbiting the sun, while human beings had not yet understood that Earth itself was a planet. Perhaps it continued its journey while civilizations rose and disappeared. Perhaps throughout the entire history of humanity, from the first ancient people who looked toward the night sky to the age of space telescopes and supercomputers, that world has remained there, silent, distant, unnamed, unseen, and yet, perhaps, still existing. What is especially strange is that we are not searching for Planet 9 by seeing it first. Like many discoveries in the history of science, researchers are first looking at what it may be causing. An object does not need to appear directly before our eyes in order to reveal its influence. If it has mass, it has gravity. And gravity, in a sense, is the language invisible worlds use to speak to the universe. A distant planet may send no signal. It may make no sound. It may shine too faintly for us to see. But it can pull on other objects. It can alter orbits. It can create unusual patterns of motion. And if we are patient enough, precise enough, and willing to observe for long enough, we may begin to realize that behind those movements, there could be an unseen cause. That is what makes Planet 9 such a beautiful symbol of the way human beings discover reality. We do not always see the cause. Sometimes, we only see its consequences, and then we follow those consequences back into the darkness. Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life observing another kind of invisible universe, the human mind. He was deeply interested in what exists beneath the surface of consciousness. We may know what we are thinking, but we do not always know why we are thinking it. We may feel sad without understanding the reason. We may fear something even when our rational mind knows there is no immediate danger. We may repeat the same patterns of choice throughout our lives without realizing that a deeper pattern may be quietly guiding us. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The meaning of this idea can be understood as a profound reminder. What we cannot see within ourselves does not necessarily disappear. It may continue to operate. It may continue to influence our lives. And sometimes, we only begin to recognize its existence when we look at the orbits our lives have created. Perhaps that is why Planet 9 possesses a beauty that reaches beyond astronomy. An invisible planet in a distant region of the solar system. A force not yet confirmed, but suspected through the effects it may produce. Something existing beyond the familiar regions of light. If we look at it through a perspective inspired by Jung, we might see it as a symbolic image of the unexplored parts of the human being. Not everything within us exists in the light of consciousness. Some memories lie very deep. Some fears have been forgotten. Some desires have never been admitted. Some abilities have never been awakened. They are like distant planets, not because they do not exist, but because they lie beyond the range of ordinary sight. And this brings us back to a larger question. If even our own solar system, the part of the universe closest to us, could still be hiding a large planet, then how much do we truly know about the rest of the Milky Way? The Milky Way contains an enormous number of stars. Around many of those stars, planetary systems may exist. There are planets burning under extreme heat. There are frozen worlds covered in ice. There are planets orbiting so close to their stars that a year lasts only a few days. And there are worlds so distant that one complete orbit may last longer than the entire recorded history of humanity. And among all those worlds, there may be countless planets we have never discovered. Not because they are not there, but because we have not yet found a way to see them. Perhaps this is one of the most humbling lessons science can offer. Our maps are not reality. A map only shows what has been recorded. A catalogue of planets only shows what has been discovered. And what we have not yet found is not necessarily something that does not exist. When thinking about Planet 9, however, we should also maintain an important sense of scientific caution. At present, it remains a hypothesis that has not been directly confirmed. Perhaps one day, we will find it. But perhaps the unusual orbital patterns that inspired the hypothesis will eventually be explained by a completely different model. And that is precisely part of the beauty of science. Science does not ask us to believe something simply because it is fascinating. Science allows us to ask questions, to observe, to calculate, to test, and to wait. Sometimes, waiting itself is part of discovery. A planet that lies extremely far away may move very slowly across our sky. An orbital period lasting thousands of years cannot be understood through only a few days of observation. Some mysteries of the universe cannot be forced to answer according to the hurried rhythm of human life, and perhaps life is like that too. We often want to understand immediately. We want answers immediately. We want to know why we are sad, why we are afraid, why something that happened long ago can still influence the present. But sometimes, understanding requires time. There are parts of the mind that only begin to appear when we become quiet enough. There are questions that do not need to be answered tonight. They only need to be held, gently, without judgment. Like an astronomer, looking toward a dark region of the sky, and knowing, just because I cannot see anything does not mean there is nothing there. When night arrives, we often think of darkness as simply the absence of light. But in astronomy, darkness is also the condition that makes many things visible. Only when daylight disappears do the stars begin to appear before us. Some things cannot be seen when everything is too bright. Perhaps the mind is similar. When the noise of a long day slowly becomes quiet, when the room grows still, we sometimes begin to notice things that we ignored during the daylight hours. A memory, an emotion, a question, a dream. These things may be like distant planets within the inner universe. They may have been there for a very long time. We simply had not been looking in the right direction. And perhaps that is the most beautiful thing the story of Planet 9 leaves with us. Not the certainty that there is definitely a planet hiding in the darkness, but the reminder that reality may always be larger than the limits of our current understanding. There are worlds we have not seen. There are forces we do not yet understand. There are mysteries quietly existing even when no one knows they are there. So if tonight you are lying in your room, preparing to close your eyes after a long day, try to imagine that, far beyond Neptune, there may be a region of cold darkness through which sunlight takes many hours to travel. And somewhere within that darkness, perhaps a world is slowly moving along an enormous orbit. Perhaps it exists. Perhaps it does not. We still do not know. But perhaps it is precisely that uncertainty that makes the sky feel even larger. And perhaps life becomes deeper when we accept that not every mystery needs to be solved immediately. One day, we may discover Planet 9, or perhaps we will discover a different answer. But until then, that invisible planet continues to exist in scientific imagination as a gentle reminder that even in our own cosmic backyard, there may still be an undiscovered world. And if a large planet could still be hiding in the darkness of our solar system, then out there, across the vastness of the Milky Way, how many secrets are still waiting for us? Perhaps millions, perhaps billions, or perhaps more than anything we have ever imagined. Because the universe has never promised that it would show us everything. It simply exists. And little by little, through tiny clues, through strange movements, through faint traces of light, human beings learn how to see deeper into the darkness. And perhaps, one day, we will realize that the things which seemed most mysterious were never truly gone. They were always there, silent, patient, waiting until the human eye could finally see far enough to find them. Planets forming within the shadows of dust. Perhaps one of the strangest and most beautiful images in the universe is that of a world being born in a place where we can barely see anything at all. When we think of a planet, we usually imagine a finished world, a round sphere quietly orbiting its star. Perhaps a blue planet like Earth, a red world like Mars, a planet covered by thick clouds, or a frozen world lying at the distant edge of a star system. But before becoming a complete world, before it has skies, oceans, mountains, an atmosphere, or cycles of day and night, a planet begins in a far more chaotic state. It begins in dust, in gas, in tiny particles of matter orbiting a young star. There is no architect standing outside, arranging everything into place. No hands shaping a planet into existence. There is only gravity, motion, collision, temperature, and time. And yet, from these seemingly chaotic conditions, new worlds slowly begin to emerge. A young star is often surrounded by a vast disk of gas and dust. Tiny particles of matter orbit around the center, like an enormous river of material constantly moving through space. Within this environment, grains of dust can collide with one another. Some collisions cause them to bounce apart. Others allow them to stick together. Little by little, small structures begin to form. Small, very small. But given enough time, small things can become something extraordinary. From grains of dust to larger particles. From larger particles to rocks. From rocks to planetesimals. And eventually, through millions of years of collisions, gravity, and transformation, a planet may begin to emerge. What is especially strange is that during much of this process, we do not see the planet directly. We see the place where it is being born, and sometimes that place begins to change. Astronomers observe gaps appearing in disks of dust. They see rings of material, spiral structures, regions where motion appears unusual, parts of a disk that no longer behave exactly as we might expect. And from these traces, an idea begins to emerge. Perhaps a planet is forming there. We do not always see a child before we recognize its presence in a room. Sometimes, we notice the changes around it, an empty space, a movement, a disturbance. The universe can be like that too. A forming planet may influence the disk of material surrounding it. Its gravity can pull, gather, and alter the distribution of gas and dust. Partified particles that once moved in one pattern may begin to follow another. A gap may appear. A ring of dust may form. A spiral structure may spread across the disk. And then, human beings, standing hundreds or thousands of light years away, look at these changes and begin to wonder what created them. Could a new world be forming somewhere within that darkness? This is one of the most beautiful things about science. We do not always wait until something appears clearly before our eyes, before we begin to recognize its existence. Sometimes, we observe what changes around it, and from those changes, we trace our way back towards something we cannot yet see. This creates a profound connection with the way Carl Gustav Jung observed the human mind. We often believe that we know ourselves. We know our names, our work, our preferences, the things we like and dislike. But for Jung, consciousness was only one part of the entire psychological world. Beneath what we know about ourselves lie deeper layers containing memories, emotions, symbols, instincts, and possibilities that we do not always see directly. And like a planet forming inside a disk of dust, these hidden things may not appear directly before consciousness. They appear through traces, through dreams, through powerful emotions we do not understand, through repeated reactions, through subtle changes in our lives. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This idea feels especially appropriate when we imagine planets forming within clouds of dust. We often want light, clarity, immediate answers, but many important things begin in darkness. Not every darkness is emptiness. Not everything we cannot yet see is absent. Sometimes, darkness is the place where something is beginning to form, a new idea, a transformation, a possibility, a different version of ourselves. Before a major change becomes visible, life often begins to offer small signs. Perhaps we no longer feel satisfied with what once felt familiar. Perhaps we experience an urge we cannot explain. Perhaps a dream returns again and again. Perhaps we begin to feel a quiet desire to start something new. At first, we may call it confusion. We may call it chaos. But perhaps that chaos is not simply destruction. Perhaps it is evidence that a new structure is beginning to form. This is what makes the story of planets being born feel surprisingly close to human life. Before a planet clearly appears before human eyes, the first evidence of its existence may be the disturbance it creates within its birthplace. This is not only an astronomical idea, it is also an image of transformation. Anything new, when it begins to emerge, may change what already exists. A forming planet does not simply rest silently inside a disk of dust. It interacts with its environment. Its gravity creates influence. The surrounding material begins to change its path. In other words, the birth of something new may begin with the transformation of something old, and sometimes that transformation looks like chaos. In life, we often fear chaos because we love stability. We want everything to remain in its proper place. We want the future to be predictable. We want to know exactly what will happen tomorrow. But the universe does not always develop through perfect, straight lines. Stars are born within clouds of matter. Planets form through collisions. Galaxies interact and transform. Life on Earth has evolved through countless processes of experimentation, adaptation, and change. Perhaps chaos is not always a sign that everything is going wrong. Sometimes, chaos is a sign that something is moving, something that no longer accepts remaining still, something that is trying to discover its own shape. When we observe disks of dust surrounding young stars, there is another remarkable fact that invites us to think more deeply. The light we see from those distant planetary systems began its journey long before it reached us. That means when we observe a distant region where planets are forming, we are actually looking into the past. The planet we see forming in our observations may have changed dramatically by the time its light finally reaches Earth. Perhaps, by now, a complete world has already formed there. Perhaps several worlds. Perhaps an entirely different planetary system has emerged. We see the past and call it the present because light needs time to travel through the universe. And that makes existence feel even stranger. Somewhere out there, perhaps a planet is being born at this very moment. Dust particles are colliding. Gas is moving. Gravity is pulling matter together. A gap is opening within a disk. A structure is beginning to emerge. And perhaps no one is there to witness it. There is no applause, no announcement, no moment when the universe stops and says, "A new world has just been born." There is only matter, time, gravity, and patience. Perhaps this is also how the most important changes occur in human life. They do not always begin with a dramatic event. Sometimes they begin quietly. A thought, a question, a doubt, a dream. A moment when we realize that we are no longer exactly who we used to be. At first, no one else notices. Perhaps even we do not understand it ourselves. But little by little, movements within us begin to change the world around us. A new choice, a new path, a meeting, a decision. And many years later, when we look back, we may realize that a new version of ourselves began forming long before we knew it. Perhaps it began during a chaotic period. Perhaps it began when we felt lost. Perhaps it began when life no longer followed its familiar orbit. Like a planet forming inside a disk of dust, no one sees it clearly from the beginning. But the traces are already there. A gap, a spiral, a change in motion, a sign that somewhere within the darkness, a new world is slowly taking shape. So when we look toward the night sky, perhaps we are not only looking at worlds that have already become complete. Somewhere, we may also be looking at worlds that have not yet become themselves. Planets still forming, places where chaos has not yet ended, regions where dust has not yet settled, orbits that have not yet become stable. And yet, from all these unfinished things, a world may emerge, and perhaps that is a gentle thought to carry with you before sleep. If tonight your life still contains things that are unclear, if there are emotions you do not yet understand, if there are paths whose destinations remain unknown, perhaps not every form of chaos means that you are losing yourself. Perhaps, at a deeper level, something new is beginning to form. Like planets within clouds of dust, they do not appear instantly. They do not begin in perfection. They begin with tiny particles, unpredictable movements, collisions, changes, and time, a great deal of time. The universe does not hurry. A planet may require millions of years to become a complete world. Perhaps we, too, can be gentler with ourselves. Not everything needs to be finished today. Not every question needs an answer right now. Sometimes, we are simply living through the stage of dust, of movement, of signs, of changes that do not yet have names. But somewhere within all of those things, a new world may be coming into existence. And perhaps one day, when we look back at the period we now call chaos, we may understand that it was never merely disorder. It was the first trace, the first sign of something new, something we could not yet see, but something that had already begun to exist, silently, patiently, within the darkness, like a planet slowly forming, among the clouds of dust in the universe, worlds that can be seen in infrared. There is something that can easily make us misunderstand the universe. We often think that if something cannot be seen, it must be completely lost in darkness. But reality is not quite like that. Some objects have not disappeared. They simply exist beyond the range that human eyes are capable of perceiving. A cold planet may be there. It may be quietly orbiting a distant star. It may possess mountains, oceans, a thick atmosphere, and storms that last for centuries. Yet if the light it emits lies outside the range, visible to human eyes, then to us. But being invisible to humans does not mean being invisible to the universe. The human eye is a remarkably limited instrument. We live within a vast ocean of electromagnetic waves, yet our eyes can perceive only an extremely narrow band of that ocean. We call that small portion visible light, stretching from red to violet, a thin and fragile bridge between the physical world and our perception of it. But beyond that bridge, there is so much more. Radio waves, microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet light, X-rays, gamma rays. The universe has never shone only in ways that human beings can see. It is simply that, for a very long time, humanity unconsciously assumed that what our eyes could perceive represented a large part of reality. Perhaps that is one of our oldest illusions. We look up at the night sky and think we are looking at the universe. But in truth, we are seeing only a very small version of it. A cold planet may appear almost completely black in ordinary visible light. It may not be hot enough to shine brightly. It may reflect very little light. It may orbit far away from its star, or it may be hidden by the overwhelming brightness of the star beside it. Yet that planet still has heat, and wherever there is heat, there can be radiation. Not necessarily the kind of light our eyes can see, but infrared light. Imagine a cold winter night. You are standing outside in darkness. A person is standing several meters away, and you cannot clearly see them with your ordinary eyes. But if you had a special device capable of detecting heat, that person's body could appear as a source of light. Not because they suddenly appeared. They had been there all along. The only thing that changed was the way we observed them. And that is one of the most extraordinary things about modern astronomy. Sometimes, to discover a new world, we do not need to travel there. We simply need to learn how to see through a different kind of light. Young planets provide a particularly fascinating example. When a planet is newly formed, it can still retain some of the energy from its birth. Matter collides. Gravity compresses. The interior moves and changes. Heat is generated and retained. A young planet can therefore be much hotter than an older one, so even if it is surrounded by darkness, it may still quietly release energy into space. In ordinary visible light, it may be extremely difficult to see, but in infrared wavelengths, it may become much easier to detect. There is something almost poetic about this. A world still too young to have completely cooled. A newborn planet shining not with the familiar light our eyes recognize, but with the warmth remaining from the very process of its birth. As if every planet carries within itself a thermal memory, a trace of the moment when it first entered existence. And then, as millions and billions of years pass, that planet slowly cools. Its infrared glow becomes weaker. Observing it becomes more difficult. The world itself has not disappeared, but the signal it sends to us becomes increasingly faint. This forces us to reconsider the very meaning of the word invisible. Is something truly invisible simply because our eyes cannot see it? Or is invisibility merely the name we give to things that exist beyond the limits of our current perception? Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life exploring another kind of invisible world. Not distant planets, but the deeper layers of the human mind. We can observe behavior, but we cannot always see the motives behind it. We can feel fear, but we do not always know where that fear began. We have dreams, images that emerge within the mind, unexpected emotions, reactions that seem to have no clear cause. There are things happening inside us that consciousness cannot directly observe, but like a planet invisible to the naked eye, they still leave traces. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." It is a thought deeply connected to the idea of invisible worlds. What we cannot see does not lose its power to influence us. An invisible planet still has gravity. A forgotten memory can still shape emotion. A fear we have not recognized can still influence our choices. An unseen world can still exist. And sometimes, the only thing that needs to change is not reality itself, but the instrument through which we observe it. Infrared telescopes have helped humanity expand its vision. Instead of looking only at what shines within familiar wavelengths, we began to observe heat. And when we did, structures that had once remained hidden began to emerge. Cold clouds of dust, regions where stars are forming, young planets, distant objects, places where ordinary visible light is almost powerless. There is something deeply beautiful about this. Science does not merely create more powerful machines. Science changes the way human beings see the world. Every new technology is almost like a new sense. Radio telescopes allow us to listen. X-ray telescopes allow us to observe violent processes of extraordinary energy. Infrared telescopes allow us to detect the warmth of objects hidden deep within darkness. The universe is not silent. It is not completely dark. It is not empty. Perhaps we simply have not yet learned all the languages it is speaking. And that is what makes hidden planets so fascinating. They remind us that existence does not depend on humanity's ability to observe it. A planet does not need us to discover it in order to continue orbiting its star. An ocean does not need to be named for its currents to continue moving beneath the ice. A world does not need to appear in an astronomical catalogue in order to become part of the universe. It is still there, in the darkness, quietly, patiently, waiting for the day when the light it emits is finally recognized by a human telescope. Perhaps that is a beautiful way to end this thought before continuing our journey. Because when night falls, we often look up at the sky and see vast black spaces between the stars. But perhaps those spaces are not truly empty. Perhaps hidden within that darkness are frozen planets, wandering worlds, oceans beneath layers of ice, newborn planets still carrying the warmth of their formation. Worlds that have existed for billions of years but have never been seen by a human being. And perhaps, even at this very moment, somewhere in the Milky Way, a planet is quietly releasing a small amount of heat into space. Its radiation is traveling through darkness, across distances almost impossible to imagine. And perhaps one day in the future, a human telescope will detect that faint signal. Not because the planet has just appeared, but because, at last, we have learned how to see it. And as you think about that in the quietness of tonight, perhaps you can ask yourself a smaller question, though one that is no less profound. How many things in our own lives are truly there, yet remain unnoticed, simply because we are still looking at them in an old way? Perhaps the answer will not come immediately. And it does not need to, because sometimes, before we can see a new world, the first thing we need to do is simply expand our vision a little further. Then allow the darkness to become peaceful. Allow the stars to remain where they are. Allow the invisible worlds to continue drifting through the vastness of space. And perhaps, within that very stillness, we may realize that the universe has never become any less mysterious. We are simply, little by little, learning how to see more deeply. The battle to photograph a planet. Perhaps, in the imagination of many people, finding a distant planet seems simple. You point a powerful enough telescope toward the sky, magnify the image, and wait for a new world to appear. But the universe is not so easy to see. A planet may exist right beside a star, orbiting it for billions of years. It may possess an atmosphere, mountains, oceans, enormous storms, or seasons that stretch endlessly across time, and yet remain almost completely invisible to us. Not because it is not there, but because the light of the nearby star is simply too powerful. Imagine a tiny firefly flying beside an enormous searchlight in the darkness of night. You know the firefly may be there, but the overwhelming brightness of the searchlight makes it almost impossible for your eyes to distinguish that tiny point of light. That is one of the greatest challenges humanity faces when trying to directly photograph a planet outside our solar system. The planet is not only small, it is also faint, and it exists right beside an object so brilliantly luminous that it overwhelms almost everything around it. For an Earth-like planet orbiting a Sun-like star, the difference in brightness can be almost impossible to comprehend. The star is like a giant lighthouse, while the planet is little more than a tiny particle reflecting an extremely small fraction of the light it receives. And yet, humanity has not given up. There is something remarkable about the history of science. We usually begin by seeing the things that are easiest to see. Then, step by step, we move closer to the things that are more difficult to find. From planets with obvious signals, to smaller planets, colder planets, more distant planets, and eventually, worlds almost swallowed by the light of their parent stars. The battle to capture a direct image of a planet is, in a sense, not merely a battle against distance, it is also a battle against light. And it may sound paradoxical, but sometimes, in order to see a new world, the first thing we must do is not collect more light. We must remove some of it. That is where the coronagraph comes in. A coronagraph can be imagined as a small mask designed to block the overwhelming light of a star. The idea sounds simple, but carrying it out with extraordinary precision is incredibly difficult. You must block the starlight effectively, but you must not block the faint light coming from the planet. You must control microscopic distortions, tiny vibrations, unwanted reflections, errors almost too small to notice, because in the search for exoplanets, sometimes even a tiny amount of unwanted light is enough to hide an entire world. And this leads us to an interesting realization. There are some things that cannot be seen simply by staring harder. Sometimes, in order to see, we must learn how to make the things that shine too brightly become quiet. It is an idea that can also bring us into the psychological world that Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life exploring. In everyday life, consciousness can often resemble a powerful source of light. It focuses on what is obvious, what is urgent, what can easily be named, what society tells us deserves our attention. But beneath that light, there may be smaller things, an emotion we have not recognized, an old memory, a fear, an image from a dream, a part of ourselves we have never truly examined. These things do not necessarily disappear. Sometimes they are simply obscured. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The quote is not about telescopes or planets, but when placed beside the search for distant worlds, it reveals an intriguing parallel. More light does not always mean greater understanding. Sometimes, the thing that shines too brightly is exactly what causes smaller things to disappear. A star that is too bright hides a planet. A voice that is too loud hides other voices. A familiar thought hides a new idea. An image we have created of ourselves can hide the person who truly exists deeper within. And just as astronomers use a coronagraph to block some of a star's light, perhaps human beings sometimes need to create a space of quiet within the mind so that things which have always existed can finally have a chance to appear. But the coronagraph is only one part of the battle. Even after the light of a star has been reduced, Earth's atmosphere creates another problem. The air around us is not completely still. It is constantly moving. Temperatures change. Layers of gas have different densities. As light passes through the atmosphere, it bends and becomes distorted. That is why stars sometimes appear to twinkle. To human eyes, this may be beautiful. But for a telescope attempting to detect a tiny planet, those fluctuations can become an enormous obstacle. That is why adaptive optics were developed. These systems can measure distortions in light and adjust a telescope's mirrors at extraordinary speeds, compensating for the changes caused by Earth's atmosphere. It almost sounds like science fiction, a mirror that does not remain perfectly still. Instead, it constantly changes its shape by microscopic amounts, almost as if it is learning to adapt to the chaos of the air. As a result, the image becomes sharper, and within that sharper image, a planet that was once hidden may begin to emerge. Once again, science gives us an image that feels almost symbolic. In order to see something clearly, we cannot always force the world itself to become perfectly still. Sometimes, we must learn how to adjust our instruments to a world that never stops moving. Beyond optical instruments, another important part of the search takes place in something less poetic, but no less extraordinary: data. A modern astronomical image is not simply a photograph. Behind it may lie thousands of measurements, algorithms that process signals, models that remove noise, methods designed to distinguish the real light of a planet from distortions created by the instruments themselves. Sometimes, a planet does not appear in the data as a clearly visible sphere. It may appear only as a tiny signal, a faint point of light, a difference so small that it seems almost insignificant. But when analyzed correctly, that tiny difference may be evidence of an entire world. There is something beautiful about that image. A world may have sent its light traveling through space for years, centuries, or perhaps much longer. That light eventually reaches a telescope, but it is still not enough to simply announce, "I am here." Human beings must learn how to listen to the data, to separate the signal from the noise, to recognize what matters within an ocean of information, and, perhaps, on another level, our own lives are similar. Not everything important arrives as a loud voice. Sometimes, the thing that changes us is only a small feeling, a passing thought, a dream, a memory we believed we had forgotten. If we are not quiet enough, it may disappear beneath countless other noises. Another especially fascinating technology is the starshade. Instead of placing a device that blocks light inside the telescope itself, the idea behind a starshade is to position a large structure in space, precisely between a telescope and a distant star. It is like a giant umbrella designed to block the light of the star. Once the overwhelming brightness is removed, the much fainter light from a planet may have a chance to appear. The idea sounds almost too simple. If the star is too bright, block it. But in the vastness of space, everything becomes far more complicated. The distance between a starshade and a telescope may stretch across tens of thousands of kilometers. Keeping both instruments aligned with extraordinary precision is an immense technological challenge. Even a tiny misalignment could allow unwanted starlight to enter, and the planet could disappear once again. Once more, we see that the search for a tiny world requires a patience that is almost astonishing. Human beings must calculate, adjust, experiment, wait, correct mistakes, and try again, all for the chance to see a tiny point of light located many light years away. And when we think about that, it is difficult not to feel something, because in this vast universe, human beings are incredibly small. We live on a small planet, orbiting an ordinary star, inside a galaxy containing hundreds of billions of stars. And yet, we continue to look upward. We continue building increasingly sophisticated telescopes. We continue searching for ways to block the light of stars. We continue adjusting mirrors with extraordinary precision. We continue processing the faintest signals, all to answer one simple question. What is out there? What worlds exist within forms of light we have never seen? What planets are orbiting in silence? Could there be another Earth? Other oceans? Other skies? Places where another living being might be looking upward and seeing a different star that they call their sun? We do not know. But perhaps not knowing is exactly what makes this journey so beautiful. An Earth-like planet beside a star may be like a firefly beside a searchlight. And yet humanity continues trying to see that firefly. Little by little, one technology at a time, one new telescope at a time, one new stream of data, one generation of scientists after another, and perhaps, one day, within an image created from light that has traveled through space for many years, a tiny point will appear, no longer merely a hypothesis, no longer merely an indirect signal, but the image of a world that was once completely invisible, a world hidden behind overwhelming light, a world that had been there all along. We simply had not yet developed the ability to see it, and perhaps that is what makes the search for planets a story that goes beyond science. Because it reminds us that sometimes what we are searching for is not as far away as we imagine. It does not necessarily appear at the moment we want it to. It may have existed all along, hidden behind something too bright, waiting for us to learn how to block some of the light, to quiet the disturbances, to remove the noise, to adjust the way we see. And then, in one very small moment of precision and patience, a world may appear, tiny, distant, silent, but completely real. And as darkness slowly fills your room tonight, perhaps allow that thought to drift gently through your mind. Somewhere, far beyond us, there may be a planet that no human being has ever seen directly. It continues to orbit. It continues to receive light from its star. It continues to experience its own days and nights in whatever way is possible for that world. And it does not know that, on a small planet called Earth, human beings are patiently building machines in an attempt to see it. Perhaps one day, we will succeed. But even before that day arrives, the existence of hidden worlds reminds us of something beautiful. Not everything that has not yet been seen does not exist. Sometimes, it is simply waiting for us to become patient enough, sensitive enough, and humble enough to learn how to see, reading the atmosphere and weather of a world we cannot see. Perhaps one of the strangest and most beautiful things about modern science is that human beings can begin to learn about the weather on a world they have never truly seen. Take a moment to imagine that quietly. Far beyond Earth, perhaps hundreds or thousands of light years away, there may be a planet orbiting an unfamiliar star. We cannot stand on its surface. We cannot look up into its sky. We do not know exactly what its clouds look like. We do not know whether it has pale blue dawns, deep crimson sunsets, or a sky permanently lost in darkness. In many cases, we cannot even see the planet as a world. It may be only a point of light, or even less than a point of light, perhaps only a tiny change in brightness, a fragile fluctuation in the data, a signal so subtle that it might almost seem insignificant. And yet, from these tiny changes, human beings begin asking enormous questions. What is in its atmosphere? Is there water vapor? Is there carbon dioxide? Methane? What is the temperature there? Are powerful winds moving through its skies? How hot is the day side? How cold is the night side? Could there be clouds? Could there be rain? Could there be oceans that no human eye has ever seen? Perhaps this is where science becomes closer to poetry than we usually imagine, because we are trying to read an entire world through light. Light leaves a star, travels through space, touches or passes through the atmosphere of a planet, and then continues its long journey for years, centuries, or perhaps even millennia before a tiny fraction of it finally reaches one of our telescopes. And within that light, there is a story not written in words, not spoken by a voice, not preserved in books, but written in wavelengths, in dark gaps, in absorption lines, in changes so subtle that sometimes only instruments and mathematics can recognize them. When light passes through the atmosphere of a planet, different molecules can absorb different parts of the spectrum. Water vapor leaves its own signatures. Carbon dioxide leaves others. Methane does the same. Each form of matter, in a sense, leaves behind a signature, and scientists are learning how to read those signatures. They do not need to fly to the planet. They do not need to stand on its surface. They do not need to open the door of a spacecraft and step outside. They only need to observe the light. That is what makes the study of exoplanets one of the strangest journeys of human intelligence. We do not travel to these worlds. Instead, in a very quiet way, we allow those worlds to come to us through light. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Every psychological expression is a symbol if we assume that it states or signifies something more and other than itself which eludes our present knowledge. Perhaps when this idea is placed beside the story of distant planets, it reveals a beautiful similarity. A symbol is not the whole thing it represents. A trace is not the object that created it. A dark line in a spectrum is not an entire atmosphere. A change in brightness is not the planet itself. But these things can lead us towards something greater. They tell us that behind what is visible, there may be a deeper reality waiting to be discovered. In astronomy, this happens in a physical sense. In Jungian psychology, it happens within the depths of the mind. We rarely see the whole of something immediately. We see the expression, we see the trace, we see the consequence, and from there, little by little, we learn to understand the cause. A dream may seem like only a dream. An image appearing in the mind may seem like only an image. A sudden emotion may last only a few seconds. But for Jung, what emerges from the mind is not always meaningless. Sometimes what appears before us is only the surface of a deeper reality that consciousness has not yet fully recognized. He once described dreams as a doorway into the hidden depths of the soul. The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul, opening into that cosmic night, which was psyche long before there was any ego consciousness. And perhaps, when we look toward distant planets, we are standing before similar little doors. A signal of light, a change in temperature, a light curve, a chemical signature. Each one is like a tiny doorway opening toward an immense world that we cannot yet enter. What is even more astonishing is that light may also help us understand the weather. As a planet moves through its orbit and rotates, different regions may gradually turn toward us. Some areas may be hotter, others colder. Some may reflect more light, others may be covered by clouds. The brightness of the planet changes, and within those changes, scientists can attempt to infer the distribution of heat, the movement of the atmosphere, and the differences between the day side and the night side. Think about that. A world hundreds of light years away may have wind. Hot currents of gas may be moving across its sky. Enormous clouds may be traveling from one hemisphere to another. One side of the planet may be permanently scorched by its star, while the other remains forever immersed in darkness. There may be storms more powerful than anything humanity has ever experienced. And we, from a small planet called Earth, may be able to recognize part of that story simply by studying light. It is difficult not to feel a sense of wonder, because it reminds us that seeing does not always mean seeing with our eyes. Human beings cannot see infrared light. We cannot see radio waves. We cannot see X-rays, and yet they exist. We extend our eyes with telescopes. We extend our ears with receivers. We extend our memory with computers. We extend our ability to recognize reality through mathematics. And little by little, reality becomes larger. What we called invisible yesterday may become measurable today. What is still a mystery today may become data tomorrow. But every answer opens even more questions. If we can detect water vapor in the atmosphere of a distant world, does that mean there are oceans there? If methane exists, how is it being produced? If carbon dioxide is present, how does the climate operate? If the temperature is suitable for liquid water, could the environment be favorable for life? And if a planet shows strange chemical signatures, are we witnessing geological activity, unknown chemical reactions, or some form of biology? This is where the caution of science becomes especially important. A signal is not a final proof. A molecule is not an organism. An interesting observation does not mean that we have discovered life. But science does not need to rush. Science knows how to live with questions. Perhaps that is also a gentle lesson for us in the hours before sleep. Not everything needs to be answered immediately. Some mysteries require time. Some truths only appear when we are patient enough to observe. There may be things within our own minds that we cannot understand today. A sadness that seems to come from nowhere. A recurring dream. A memory we thought had disappeared. A vague feeling that there is still something in our lives we have not yet recognized. We often want to name everything immediately. We want answers. We want to turn the unknown into the known. But perhaps, sometimes, we can learn from astronomers. They observe a point of light for years. They watch, measure, compare, wait. They do not force the universe to answer before it is ready. Perhaps our inner lives can be approached in the same way. Not every emotion needs to be resolved tonight. Not every question needs an answer before we fall asleep. Some things can simply be set down, like incomplete data, like distant stars, like a planet that we know only through traces hidden in light. And perhaps one day, when we look back, what once seemed vague will become clear, because some worlds do not appear before our eyes all at once. They reveal themselves gradually as we learn how to see. In space, we are learning to read the atmosphere of a planet through light. Within ourselves, perhaps we are also learning to read the small signals of the soul, an emotion, a dream, a symbol, a memory, a longing, a feeling we cannot explain. They do not always give us the whole answer, but they may be signs, small traces of light across the vast sky of the mind. And perhaps that is the greatest wonder of all. Human beings have never set foot on most of the worlds we study. We cannot feel their wind against our skin. We cannot stand beneath their skies. We cannot look upward and watch unfamiliar clouds passing overhead. And yet, we are beginning to understand them, little by little, through light, through traces, through things that once seemed far too small to matter. Perhaps the universe is reminding us of something very gentle. Not everything invisible is unknowable. Sometimes, we simply have not yet found the right kind of light with which to see it. And in the quiet darkness of tonight, as you prepare to close your eyes, imagine a distant planet silently orbiting a star you will never see with your naked eyes. Perhaps there are clouds there. Perhaps there are winds. Perhaps there is an unfamiliar atmosphere. And the light from that distant place, after a journey almost impossible to imagine, is still traveling through the darkness of the universe. Perhaps one day, it will reach us. And when it does, we may understand one more thing about a world that once seemed completely invisible. Because in this vast universe, just as in the depths of the human mind, perhaps the most important thing is not to see everything. Perhaps it is simply to learn how to listen to the smallest traces that reality quietly leaves behind. Old data may contain new worlds. There is a particularly beautiful idea in the journey of exploring the universe. An idea that makes us pause and think about the way human beings come to recognize reality. It is the possibility that a world may have been in front of us all along. Its light may have been captured by a telescope years ago. Its signal may have been recorded and stored on servers, resting silently inside enormous archives of data. Numbers connected to its existence may have appeared on scientists' screens. Tiny clues may have passed through algorithms, but we did not recognize them. Not because the planet did not exist, not because its light had never reached us, but simply because, at that time, humanity did not yet know how to see it. It is a thought both humbling and extraordinary. We often imagine that scientific discovery happens in a very clear and straightforward way. A scientist searches for something, a telescope sees it, and then a new world is discovered. But reality is often more complicated. Sometimes, a discovery does not begin because something new has appeared in the universe. It begins because we have found a new way of seeing. The universe does not change at the moment we recognize it. What changes is us. A planet may have been orbiting its star for millions or billions of years before its name appeared in a scientific paper. It did not need human discovery in order to begin existing. It continued moving through darkness, responding to gravity, and experiencing its own cycles of day and night. Discovery simply marks the moment when that reality enters the boundaries of human awareness. And this leads us to a fascinating question. How many things are present around us right now that we have still failed to recognize? In astronomy, data is a form of memory. Every observation that is preserved is like a fragment of the past. The light collected by a telescope today may have left a distant star long ago. When we store that data, we are not simply storing numbers, we are preserving a trace of the universe. But data does not speak for itself. A scientific archive may contain millions of signals, billions of measurements, countless images, and endless light curves. Within them there is noise, there are errors, there are fluctuations created by instruments. There are signals too weak to recognize. There are patterns that do not match the models we are searching for. And sometimes, precisely because we are looking for something too specific, we may overlook something entirely different. A signal may be dismissed as noise. An anomaly may be considered an error. A small change may be ignored because it does not appear significant enough. An unfamiliar pattern may remain unnoticed because an algorithm was designed to search for a different pattern. But what is overlooked is not necessarily meaningless. Sometimes, it is simply something that exists beyond our current ability to understand. Carl Gustav Jung was deeply interested in the distance between what already exists within psychological life and what consciousness is actually able to recognize. In the quotable Jung, a collection published by Princeton University Press, we find an idea that fits beautifully with this reflection. It is a fact of everyday experience that formerly unconscious contents more or less suddenly emerge into consciousness. It is an idea worth pausing over. Things that once existed outside consciousness are not necessarily created at the moment they enter awareness. Perhaps they were already there, quietly, silently. They simply had not yet been recognized. A memory may remain dormant for years before an unexpected scent awakens it. An emotion may exist deep within us before an event finally gives us the words to name it. An inner conflict may quietly shape the way we choose, the way we love, and the way we fear, long before we truly understand that it exists. And then, one day, something that was once invisible suddenly becomes recognizable, not because it has just appeared, but because consciousness has finally learned how to see it. Perhaps this is similar to the story of astronomical signals that were overlooked in the past. The data was already there, but the question was not yet right. The instruments were not powerful enough. The algorithms were not sophisticated enough. Or perhaps humanity had simply never imagined that such a thing was worth searching for. This is where modern technology is opening a new and promising chapter. Algorithms are becoming increasingly capable of processing amounts of data that human beings could never examine on their own. Artificial intelligence can search for subtle patterns, detect delicate repetitions, and identify anomalies hidden inside enormous archives. Scientists can return to old data, reopen observations that once seemed complete, run them through new methods of analysis, and sometimes, what appears is not an error, but a question, a possibility, a clue, a world. Imagine a scientist opening a dataset collected many years ago. At the time it was recorded, the available analytical tools were not capable of recognizing a faint signal. But years later, a new algorithm is developed, the data is processed again, and within fluctuations that once appeared random, a pattern begins to emerge. Something is repeating. Perhaps an object is passing in front of a star. Perhaps gravity is causing a star to move ever so slightly. Perhaps a faint signal is appearing according to a hidden pattern. And in that moment, the entire meaning of the data may change. Numbers that once sat silently become a story. A graph becomes evidence. A disturbance becomes the whisper of a distant world. Perhaps the strangest thing is not that we discover a new planet. Perhaps it is realizing that the planet may have been recorded long ago. It was already there in the data. We simply did not yet know how to recognize it. This story carries a meaning that reaches far beyond astronomy. In human life, we also possess enormous archives of data. They are our memories, our experiences, our dreams, our encounters, our wounds, our joys that we thought we had forgotten. All of them leave traces, but we do not always know how to read them. There are things that happen during childhood whose meaning we only understand as adults. There are endings that take years before we realize what they taught us. There are painful experiences which, at the moment they occur, are simply painful. But as time passes, we begin to see a pattern, a story, a transformation, a part of ourselves that we had never recognized before. Jung emphasized that consciousness does not exist independently from the deeper and wider layers of the psyche. What remains unconscious does not simply disappear. It can continue influencing our lives and may sometimes reveal itself indirectly through dreams, memories, emotions, or behaviors that even we do not fully understand. There is something especially beautiful in this idea. We do not always need to create an entirely new reality in order to understand ourselves more deeply. Sometimes, we simply need to return, to look again at what was already there, to reread what we once overlooked, to listen to signals we once considered unimportant. Perhaps an answer has been waiting somewhere in the past, not in the form of a complete answer, but as a sign, a fragment of data, a memory, an emotion, a dream. And only when we become older, gain more language, more experience, and a new way of seeing, are we finally able to understand it. That is also why returning to old scientific data can be so fascinating. The past is not completely dead. Sometimes, the past is simply waiting for the future to understand it. A telescope from many years ago may have captured a signal that the artificial intelligence of the future will finally recognize. A scientist from a previous generation may have collected data for a discovery they would never live to witness. And this creates a beautiful connection between generations. Science is not always the story of one person. It is a conversation that continues through time. One person observes, another preserves the data. One generation develops a new tool, another asks a new question, and finally, a world that has existed for a very long time steps out of the darkness of the unknown. Perhaps this is what should make us humble before the universe. We often divide reality into two parts, what is known and what is unknown. But perhaps there is a third category, the things we have already seen without realizing that we were seeing them. Planets hidden inside old data, signals that have passed through our instruments, traces that have been carefully preserved. They are not entirely beyond our reach. They may already exist within the history of our observations. We simply have not yet found the right key to open that door. And when we think about this in the quiet of the night, there is something strangely peaceful about it. Not everything we do not yet understand has been lost. Not everything overlooked has disappeared. Not every weak signal is meaningless. Sometimes, things simply need time, a better instrument, a better question, a mind willing to see differently. Perhaps, even now, somewhere inside humanity's enormous archives of data, there are signals that no one has yet recognized. Perhaps a distant planet left its trace long ago. Perhaps its light has already reached Earth, passed through a telescope, been transformed into data, and then remained there, waiting. Not waiting to be born, not waiting to begin existing, but waiting for the day when humanity becomes capable of saying, "We have been seeing you for a very long time. Only today, at last, have we understood that you were there." And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful lessons the exploration of the universe can teach us. Reality is always larger than the way we currently see it, not because the universe is deliberately hiding its secrets, but because every age has its own limits. Every generation can only see as far as its eyes, its tools, and its imagination allow. But those limits are not the final wall. They are only the horizon, and every time we take another step, the horizon moves farther away. Somewhere in the darkness of the universe, there may still be countless worlds silently orbiting unfamiliar stars. Some we have never observed, some whose light has never been strong enough to attract our attention, and perhaps some are already hidden inside old data that we once believed we fully understood. They are still there, silent, patient, like memories resting deep within the mind, like dreams that have not yet been interpreted, like parts of ourselves that perhaps we will need many more years to truly see. And so, perhaps the story of old data is not merely a story about technology, it is a story about awareness, about the ability to return, to look at something old with new eyes, and to discover that sometimes, the most extraordinary thing is not a world that has just been found, but a world that has always been there. We simply did not yet know how to recognize it. Climax. The Milky Way may be filled with invisible worlds, and now, after traveling through the idea of rogue planets drifting in darkness, signals that appear for only a few hours, and the sophisticated methods that allow humanity to detect worlds the human eye could never directly see, perhaps we can pause for a moment before asking a question greater than all the ones that came before. Perhaps the Milky Way is not as empty as we once imagined. Perhaps, between the stars shining in the night sky, there exists an enormous number of worlds we have never known. Worlds with no names, no photographs, no precise positions on humanity's maps. Worlds that do not appear in any textbook, and yet they are there, quietly, orbiting distant stars. Or perhaps orbiting no star at all. There may be rogue planets drifting through the vast spaces between the stars, carrying their own darkness with them. They have no sunrise to announce the beginning of a new day, no sunset to bring the previous day to an end, no familiar sun rising above the horizon. Perhaps they once belonged to a planetary system, perhaps, long ago, they had a stable place of their own. They once orbited a star. They may have had neighboring planets. But then, a powerful gravitational interaction occurred. An orbit changed. A young planetary system became unstable, and that world was thrown outward, no longer having a home in the way we usually imagine one. It began a lonely journey, through darkness, across unimaginable distances, for millions, perhaps even billions of years. And perhaps, somewhere in the Milky Way, at this very moment, there are planets like these, silently drifting through space, without a single human being knowing they exist. But rogue planets may be only a small part of a much larger picture. There may be planets similar to Earth, worlds made of rock, surrounded by atmospheres, experiencing their own cycles of temperature and change. Perhaps some of them contain water. Perhaps vast oceans stretch beneath the skies of distant stars. Or perhaps something even stranger, exists oceans we may never be able to see from the outside. A planet may possess an enormous layer of ice covering its surface, cold and perfectly silent. Yet, deep beneath that frozen shell, heat from within the planet may keep water in liquid form. An ocean could exist in complete darkness. No sunlight, no blue sky, not a single ray of sunlight ever touching the water. And if a complex form of chemistry or perhaps even some form of life exists there, then an entire world could be alive at this very moment without us knowing anything about it. This changes the way we think about the idea of a habitable world. For a very long time, human beings became accustomed to thinking that life requires a star, in much the same way that we depend on the Sunday. But nature is often more complicated than the simple models we create. Energy can come from many sources, from geological activity, from heat inside a planet, from chemical reactions, from radioactive decay, from processes we still do not fully understand. And so, a dark world is not necessarily a dead world. A cold world is not necessarily an empty world. An invisible world is not necessarily a world that does not exist. Perhaps this is one of the most important messages of this entire journey. We have become too accustomed to judging reality by what we are able to see. But the universe has no obligation to exist within the limits of human observation. The Milky Way is far larger than any map we have ever drawn. And the catalogues of planets we possess today, impressive as they may be, still represent only the portion that our current technology allows us to detect. Some planets are large and hot, making them easier to observe. Some orbit close to their stars and produce strong signals. Some worlds regularly pass in front of their stars from Earth's point of view, making their presence easier to detect. But what about smaller planets? Colder planets? Worlds orbiting far away? Planets with orbital periods lasting hundreds of years? Planets hidden within complex star systems? Worlds concealed by the overwhelming light of their stars? Perhaps many of them are still waiting to be found. Within the Milky Way, there may be enormous ice giants, similar to Uranus and Neptune worlds, with deep, freezing atmospheres and physical conditions we are only beginning to understand. There may be super-Earths, planets larger than Earth, but unlike anything found in our own solar system, there are planets that orbit two stars, where two suns may appear together in the sky. There are planets orbiting pulsars, extraordinary neutron stars, whose pulses can be measured with astonishing precision. There may be worlds continuing to exist around stars that have died, or around stars entering the final stages of their lives. And there are worlds that are still being born, hidden within disks of gas and dust. There, matter collides, merges, moves, and under the influence of gravity, tiny particles of dust slowly begin to form larger structures, from grains to rocks, from rocks to worlds. And before we are able to see such a planet clearly, we may first see only what it does to the place where it is being born. A gap in a disk of dust, a ring of matter, a spiral structure, a disturbance, as though existence itself leaves traces from its very first moments. And perhaps that is what makes the entire story of invisible planets so much deeper. We do not always discover a world by looking directly at it. Sometimes we recognize it through the changes happening around it. A star begins to wobble, an orbit shifts, light grows dimmer, a signal appears for only a few hours, a beam of light bends, a mathematical model no longer fits, and from these small details, human beings begin to say, perhaps there is a world there. This is one of the most beautiful things about science. It teaches us that not seeing something directly does not mean we cannot know it exists. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This idea is often understood as a reminder of the invisible forces operating within human life. And whether we are exploring the inner world of the mind or the vastness of the universe, we often begin by observing consequences before discovering their causes. An emotion appears, a behavior repeats itself, a dream returns, an unexplained disturbance refuses to disappear, and then we begin searching for what lies behind it. Astronomy works in much the same way. A star does not move as predicted. A signal of light changes. A distant object follows a strange orbit, and scientists begin to ask, what exists here that we cannot yet see? Perhaps that is the thread connecting the exploration of the universe with the exploration of the human mind. Both begin with humility. We must admit that what we see is not everything. That consciousness is not the entire mind, and that the worlds we have discovered are not the entire universe. That every map contains blank spaces. Every method has blind spots. Every age has its limitations. But what gives us hope is that a limitation is not an ending. It is simply the place where we are currently standing. Today, a planet may be invisible. Tomorrow, a new telescope may discover it. A signal once dismissed as noise may be recognized by a new algorithm. An old collection of data may become the birthplace of a new discovery. A world may have existed within humanity's observational records for years. We simply may not yet possess the ability to correctly read the story it is telling. That is what makes the future of astronomy so deeply exciting. More powerful telescopes are being built. New methods of analyzing data continue to develop. Artificial intelligence may help recognize patterns that human beings struggle to detect within enormous collections of information. Every new instrument is like an expansion of the senses. We do not simply see farther. We learn how to see differently. And perhaps, in the coming years or decades, some of the worlds that are completely invisible today will become familiar names. We may learn their masses, their sizes, their atmospheres, their temperatures. Perhaps one day, we may even obtain direct images of planets similar to Earth, tiny points of light beside distant stars. But no matter how far technology advances, perhaps one thing will never change. Every time we expand our ability to observe, the universe becomes larger. Every answer creates more questions. Every planet we discover makes us wonder how many others remain undiscovered. Perhaps that is the true beauty of the Milky Way. Not that we know everything, but that we know we do not. And in the space between what is known and what remains unknown, human imagination continues to travel farther. Perhaps, right now, somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a rogue planet is drifting through space. Perhaps somewhere, an ocean lies deep beneath a layer of ice. Perhaps a super-Earth is quietly orbiting a red star. Perhaps a new world is forming within the dust of a young star system. Perhaps a planet was recorded in our data many years ago. And perhaps, we still do not know that we have already seen it. When we look up at the night sky, we often feel that the stars are lonely points of light. But perhaps most of them are not lonely at all. Perhaps around many of those stars, entire systems exist. Planets, moons, oceans, atmospheres, storms, deserts, volcanoes, and skies that no human being has ever seen. And all of those worlds continue to exist, whether we know about them or not. There is a strange sense of peace in that thought. We are not the center of everything, but we are part of a universe vast enough to always leave room for the unknown. And perhaps it is precisely that uncertainty that makes the journey worthwhile. Because if one day we truly knew everything, perhaps the night sky would lose some of its mystery. But tonight, when we look up at the Milky Way, there are still countless worlds without names, countless orbits yet to be calculated, countless lights yet to be decoded, countless signals waiting to be recognized. And perhaps that is the most beautiful climax of this entire story. Not a single planet, not a single discovery, but the realization that the Milky Way may be filled with invisible worlds, worlds existing beyond the boundaries of our eyes, worlds that have not yet appeared on our maps, worlds that have not yet been given names. Yet, they continue to orbit, they continue to move, they continue to change, they continue to carry their own stories through the vast darkness of the universe. And somewhere, among the billions of stars in the Milky Way, there may be a planet that no human being has ever seen. Perhaps it does not know that Earth exists, And of course, we do not yet know that it exists either, but that does not make that world any less real. It simply reminds us of something important. Reality is always larger than what we are able to see. And sometimes, when standing before a universe so immense, the most beautiful thing human beings can do is not rush to declare that we understand it. Instead, we can quietly look up at the sky, keep our curiosity, keep our humility, and continue asking questions. Because perhaps, somewhere in the darkness we look toward every night, there is still a world, silently waiting for the moment when humanity finally learns how to see it. And so, as tonight's journey slowly begins to come to an end, perhaps we realize that the universe is far greater than anything human eyes have ever witnessed. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, there may be planets without suns, lonely worlds drifting through the cold emptiness of space for millions, perhaps billions of years. No sunrise, no sunset, no familiar sky like the one we have always known. Perhaps beneath the thick ice of some distant world, an ocean is still quietly moving. Perhaps deep inside the ground of a wandering planet, heat from its core has not yet completely faded away. Perhaps inside enormous clouds of dust slowly circling young stars, new worlds are being born at this very moment. And perhaps, somewhere in the vast archives of data humanity has collected over many years, the trace of a distant planet is still lying quietly, waiting for different eyes, a different algorithm, a different way of thinking to finally recognize it. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about the story of hidden planets is not the planets themselves. It lies in a deeper truth. Reality never consists only of what we are able to see. We often live with the feeling that whatever appears before our eyes is the whole world. But science, again and again, reminds us that our eyes have limits. Technology has limits. Knowledge has limits too. There are things that exist but have not yet been discovered. Things that are present but have not yet been named. Signals passing through our world every day that we are not yet refined enough to recognize. In the psychology of Carl Gustav Jung, there is a thought that comes surprisingly close to this idea. Human beings do not completely understand their own minds. Beneath the conscious world we experience every day lies a much larger inner landscape. Forgotten memories, unnamed emotions, hidden fears, and possibilities that have never been explored. There are parts of ourselves that resemble invisible planets. They are still there, even when we cannot see them, even when we do not understand them, even when we have not yet found the words to name them. And sometimes, just as astronomers cannot see a planet directly, but can recognize it through the influence it creates, we too may recognize unconscious parts of ourselves through the traces they leave behind. An emotion that appears without an obvious reason, a dream that returns again and again, a fear whose origin we cannot explain, a strange attraction toward a person, a place, or a story, a powerful reaction to something that seems very small. Perhaps we cannot see the cause, but we can see the ripples, and sometimes those ripples tell us that somewhere in the depths of the mind, something is still there. Perhaps that is also why stories about the universe can make us feel quiet. When we look up at the sky, we suddenly realize that we do not need to understand everything immediately. Not every mystery requires an answer tonight. Not every question must be solved before we close our eyes. Some planets must be observed for years. Some orbits take hundreds of years to complete a single journey. Some signals appear for only a few hours. And some secrets leave science with only one thing to do: wait. Perhaps human beings are the same. Sometimes what we need is not to solve everything immediately, not to force the mind to find an answer, not to keep thinking until the body becomes exhausted. Some things need time. Some answers only appear when we stop searching so desperately. Some things become clear only after a peaceful night's sleep. The universe is never in a hurry. A planet may orbit its star for hundreds of years. A star may live for billions of years. Light from a distant galaxy may travel for millions of years before reaching our eyes. And within that vast rhythm, perhaps we do not need to hurry either. You do not have to solve your entire life in a single night. You do not need to know exactly what will happen tomorrow. You do not need to understand every emotion living inside you. There are still hidden parts of life, but that does not mean they do not exist. And it does not mean that we need to fear them, because sometimes mystery is not a frightening darkness. Mystery is simply something that has not yet been discovered. Perhaps out there, the Milky Way is far more crowded than we have ever imagined. Among hundreds of billions of stars, there may be countless worlds we have never seen. Burning worlds, frozen worlds, oceans hidden deep beneath ice, worlds orbiting two suns, lonely planets with no star to call home, worlds being born from dust and gas, worlds that may already have appeared in our data but still remain unrecognized. Perhaps right now, while we are preparing to drift into sleep, some distant planet is quietly orbiting a star thousands of light years away. No one on Earth knows its name. No one has ever seen its surface. No one knows what the sky above that world looks like. And yet, it continues to exist, quietly, peacefully, without needing us to know about it in order to continue its journey. And perhaps that is a beautiful thought to carry with you into sleep, that the world is larger than our worries, that the sky is wider than the thoughts spinning inside our minds, and that life, like the universe, still contains so many things waiting to be discovered. So if today you still have a question without an answer, let it rest for a while. If you still have a worry you cannot solve, allow yourself to put it down, not to give up, only to rest. Tomorrow you can continue, but tonight you do not need to go any farther. Let your mind become like a telescope that has just completed a long night of observation. Slowly dim the lights that shine too brightly. Release the thoughts that keep moving, and allow the darkness to become gentle, because darkness is not always a place where nothing exists. Sometimes, in the darkness, the most extraordinary things are quietly taking place. A planet is drifting, a star is forming, a distant ocean is moving beneath a layer of ice. And somewhere inside you, there may also be the seeds of something new that you have not yet recognized. Perhaps one day, when the time is right, you will look back and understand that what once confused you was simply part of the journey, like a planet that was once invisible, until one day, through a very small trace, it was finally discovered. Thank you for joining us on tonight's journey. From wandering planets in the darkness and oceans that may exist beneath layers of ice, to worlds that appear only in data and mysteries that are still waiting for humanity to discover them. If you enjoy gentle journeys like this, where science, the universe, and the mysterious depths of the human mind come together, please subscribe to the channel and join us for the stories that come next. Each night, we will travel a little farther into the unknown. There is no need to hurry, no need to feel tense. Just listen, just imagine, and let your mind drift freely, like a lonely planet quietly traveling between the stars. And now, let your shoulders relax. Take a gentle breath in and slowly breathe out. Allow the final thoughts of today to fade away like stars disappearing behind the night. Perhaps out there, billions of worlds are still moving, but you do not need to follow them anymore. Tonight is for rest. May you have a truly peaceful night. May your dreams be as gentle as the light of distant stars. And perhaps, in deep sleep, your mind will carry you to a world that no one has ever seen. Sleep well, and thank you for being here with us. In a universe so vast, so mysterious, and so much more beautiful than anything our eyes can see.